Hello. If you're visiting for the first time, it's fantastic to have you here. And if you're a returning listener, welcome back. This video features mostly true scary stories with the sound of gentle rain in the background. If you're looking for something to help with sleeplessness, anxiety, or stress, you're in the right place. If you enjoy the stories, I'd be grateful if you'd subscribe. Thank you for being here. I have something chilling yet exciting to share with you. An eerie story that will change how you sleep forever. But before we dive in, I want you to picture this. What if you could lose weight without lifting a finger, even while you're fast asleep? It sounds impossible, right? Well, stay tuned because I have an amazing weight loss supplement to share that can help you do just that. Just click the link in the description below for more details. Now, grab your favorite blanket, turn up the lights, and get ready to be terrified. Don't forget to comment and let me know where you're listening from. Let's go. I did not always believe in ghosts. I thought they were just stories made to scare kids, like the tales of monsters hiding under the bed. But that changed one night when I visited my grandma's old house. It was the biggest house I had ever seen, full of creaky floors and dusty corners. I remember feeling a chill in the air when I stepped inside. The sun was setting, casting long shadows that danced across the walls. As my family settled down for the night, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. My parents fell asleep quickly, but I stayed awake, listening to the strange sounds of the house. The wind howled outside, and the creaking of the house seemed to grow louder with every minute. Suddenly, I heard a faint whisper. It was so soft I thought I might have imagined it, but it seemed to call my name. "Come play," it said, just loud enough for me to hear, but quiet enough that my parents didn't wake up. My heart raced. I wanted to put the covers over my head, but something pulled me from my bed just like a toy pulled on a string. I tiptoed down the dark hallway, the wooden floor creaking with every step. I followed the sound, my eyes wide and my breath quiet. The shadows seemed to stretch and twist around me as I walked. I reached the end of the hallway, where the air turned cold and heavy. There was a door slightly ajar. My heart pounded as I pushed it open, the hinges creaking loudly, as if warning me to turn back. Inside was a dusty old room, filled with broken furniture and cobwebs. In the corner of the room, I saw a figure. It was small and hunched over, its head hung low. "Hello," I called out, my voice shaking. The figure didn't move. Slowly, I stepped closer. That's when I noticed it. It looked like a little girl, but her eyes were black as night, and her face was pale like a ghost. She turned her head slowly, a crooked smile stretching across her face. "Come play with me," she said again, but this time her voice was darker. The door slammed shut behind me, and I realized I was trapped. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't find my voice. It's funny. You think in scary movies you'd run or fight back, but there I was, frozen in fear. The girl stood up, and her smile grew wider. I felt as though the air was being sucked out of the room, the darkness closing in around us. Just then, I remembered something my grandma had told me before. When you're scared, think of happy things. So I closed my eyes and thought of my favorite park, the swings and the sunshine. But when I opened my eyes again, the girl was closer, her hands outstretched towards me. "Why won't you play?" she asked, her voice growing louder, echoing off the walls like thunder. Everything went silent, as if the world held its breath. I felt my heart racing, pounding in my chest, drowning out all other sounds. I scrambled to find the door, but it wouldn't budge. It was like something was holding it shut. I turned around, but the little girl was no longer smiling. Her face twisted into a frown, and I could feel her anger filling the room like a thick fog. I was so scared. I just wanted to go home. Suddenly, everything around me changed. The room blurred and twisted as if being pulled into a dark whirlpool. I stumbled, holding my head, feeling dizzy. The girl's laughter echoed around me, filling my mind. "You'll never leave," she said. "You'll be mine forever." The ground shook beneath me, and I fell to my knees. I could feel the chill of her breath on my neck, as if she was right behind me. I couldn't escape her grasp. It felt like I was sinking deeper into the darkness. Just when I thought all hope was lost, I remembered what I had heard about facing your fears. With every ounce of courage, I screamed, "Let me go!" And in that moment, I felt a burst of light, a force that pushed back against the shadows. The girl shrieked, the sound piercing through the air like glass shattering. Could it be that in standing up to my fear, I had a chance? Or was this just the beginning of something much darker? I could feel the light pushing back against the shadows, and with it came a strange warmth that wrapped around my heart. It was a fleeting moment of hope, but as soon as I felt it, the darkness came roaring back. "You think you can escape?" the girl hissed, her voice echoing like whispers in a dark forest. I blinked, and suddenly, I was not in the room anymore. I found myself standing in a vast, empty landscape. The ground was cracked and dry, and dark clouds swirled above me, threatening to spill rain. The girl's laughter floated in the air, sinister and mocking. "Welcome to my playground," she said, her tiny voice dripping with malice. I turned around to find her standing several feet away, her silhouette stark against the gray backdrop. She pointed at the ground, and I gasped. All around me were the remnants of toys, rusted swings, broken dolls, and games long forgotten. Each item seemed to tell a story of joy turned to despair. I could almost feel the echo of laughter that once filled this empty place, now replaced with silence and melancholy. I took a step back, unsure of what to do next. "This is where all the lost children come," she said, her eyes narrow and piercing. "They wanted to play, just like you." And now her smile turned sharp. "Now they are mine." Panic surged through me as I realized what she meant. I could feel the weight of countless eyes on me, unseen but present. I choked on my breath, trying to scream, but no sound came out. I was trapped in this nightmarish landscape, just like the other children who had vanished. Suddenly, the ground trembled, and the remnants of the toys sprawled across the cracked earth started to shift. It was as if they were coming to life, drawn towards the girl and her wicked laughter. The dolls' once cheerful faces now looked menacing, their glassy eyes glinting with a sinister glow. "Playtime is forever," she taunted, her fingers dancing in the air. I gasped as I watched the nearby swing set sway back and forth without wind, creaking ominously. The swings were empty, yet the sound of children playing echoed around me. I knew in my gut that those were not happy memories, but the haunting cries of souls trapped here with no escape. I turned and ran, my heart pounding like a drum in my chest. But the ground beneath my feet shifted like quicksand, pulling at me, dragging me back towards her. I felt the eerie gaze of the broken dolls following me, their eyes burning into my skin. Just when I thought it was hopeless, I caught sight of something shimmering in the distance, a faint, white light glowing like a beacon. Without thinking, I sprinted toward it, the shadows clawing at my heels. The girl shrieked, fury filling the air around her. "You can't leave. You have to play." I could hear her footsteps pounding behind me, a cruel echo of my own desperation. The light grew brighter, almost blinding, and I pushed myself forward. As I neared the light, I could see shapes dancing within it. Figures of children, their faces joyful yet sad. They reached out, their hands stretching towards me, pleading. "Help us," a voice cried out, and I could see that some of them looked familiar. They were kids from my school, faces I recognized but never really knew. "Stay with us. Don't leave," they chanted, their voices merging into a sweet melody that chilled me to the bone. Every step tugged at my heart. I wanted to stop, to comfort them, but I knew that I couldn't. The girl was behind me, her laughter a sinister symphony, trying to pull me back into the shadows. I reached the light, feeling its warmth flood over me. It was like stepping into a sunbeam after being trapped in darkness for too long. But as I turned to look back at the children, a wave of panic washed over me. The little girl was getting closer, her eyes blazing with rage. "You'll pay for this," she screamed as I stepped into the warm glow. In an instant, the brightness enveloped me, and I felt myself being lifted, like floating on a gentle breeze. I closed my eyes, wishing for safety. But as the warmth faded, I opened my eyes to find myself back in my grandma's room, heart racing. My bed felt comforting against my skin, but the memory of the girl lingered like a shadow in my mind. I wanted to convince myself it was a bad dream, a figment of my imagination. Yet, when I turned to look at the dim light from the window, my breath caught in my throat. There in the corner of the room stood a figure. The girl was back, her black eyes glistening and that terrifying smile etched onto her face. "You thought you could escape?" she whispered, and I understood, deep down, that this nightmare was only just beginning. I felt my heart pound in my chest, a drum echoing in the eerie silence of the room. The darkness around me felt thick, almost smothering, as I stared at her, those black, endless eyes watching my every move. "You didn't really think you could leave me behind, did you?" Her voice was sweet like candy, but carried a bitter poison. "I don't want to play," I stammered, trying to sound brave, but the words came out barely above a whisper. The girl stepped closer, her feet silent on the wooden floor, and I could see the sharp edges of her grin widening, stretching unnaturally across her face. A chill swept through the room, slicing through the remnants of my sleepy comfort. "You did try to leave, you know." She crouched down, her little face inches from mine, bringing with her the smell of damp earth and decay. "But here's the thing. Once you come to my playground, you belong to me. Forever." My spine tingled, and all the warmth of my bed felt like a distant memory. Panic surged through me, and I instinctively grabbed the blanket, pulling it over my head. I held my breath, begging that somehow she would disappear, just like the night terrors of my childhood had faded. But the blanket did nothing to drown out the faint giggles that echoed in the air, soft at first, then building into a cacophony of laughter that sent shivers down my spine. "You can hide, but you can't run," she sang, her voice echoing like a cruel lullaby. I remembered the glowing children from before, their faces filled with fear, trapped in her wicked world. My heart raced at the thought of joining them, becoming another lost soul. With renewed determination, I threw the blanket off and sprang from my bed. I needed to escape. I dashed for the door, my feet barely touching the ground. But as my hand reached for the knob, it twisted itself shut, locking me in with her. The walls around me seemed to pulse, closing in like the fingers of a hand grasping in for a tight hold. "Where do you think you're going?" She laughed, an unsettling sound that reverberated through the room, shaking the very foundation of my sanity. I turned my back against the door, trying to take deep breaths, but the air felt heavy, suffocating. I looked around frantically for something, anything that could help me escape this nightmare. My eyes landed on the old mirror hanging on the wall, its glass cracked and cloudy. Suddenly, a strange dancing light flickered in the glass, pulling my attention closer. In the reflection, I saw not just my terrified face, but visions of other terrified children trapped in dark, shadowy corners, their expressions filled with despair. They reached out, their hands pressing against the glass, as if trying to break through. "Help us!" they screamed silently, their mouths moving, but no sound escaping. I could feel my heart crack under the pressure of their desperation. I wanted to help them, but the girl stepped into my sight, blocking the view. "Don't listen to them," she cooed, her voice dripping with sweetness. "They're just jealous that they didn't play with me first." Her fingers danced lightly on the glass, drawing patterns that made me sick to my stomach. Beneath her touch, the mirror rippled as if it were water, twisting the images inside. I suddenly understood what I had to do. If this mirror trapped the souls of those lost kids, it might also be my way out. I took a step toward it. "Get away from there," she shrieked, her voice sliding from sweet to dangerous in a heartbeat. Ignoring her, I pressed my palms against the cool surface of the glass. An electric shock surged through me, and images swirled before my eyes. Sights of laughter, sunshine, and warmth suddenly replaced with screams and shadows. I was pulled deeper into the reflection, losing myself in the chaos. "You can't leave me!" The girl screamed again, her voice shaking the room, filling me with dread as if the very walls were responding to her angry commands. I fought against the pull, gripping harder to the edge of the mirror, feeling it crumbling beneath my hands, the reality blurring into a whirlpool of dark colors. "I will find you," she cried, her tone twisting into something monstrous, something that didn't belong in a child. You'll be mine, just like the others. With every ounce of willpower, I forced my way deeper into the mirror's depths, screaming against the sound of her voice, feeling it clawing at my mind. Suddenly, I felt my body pause, suspended between two worlds. I was there, facing the children trapped in darkness, and here, in the mirror, where the girl loomed closer, her shadow falling over me like a blanket of terror. Then something inside me shifted, a torrent of determination breaking free. "No, I will escape this," I yelled, focusing on the glowing light I had seen before, the hope that had flickered just moments ago. My heart raced as I pushed against the suffocating darkness. I had to reach it, to break free from her grasp once and for all. And suddenly, I burst through the surface of the mirror, feeling the glass explode behind me. I stumbled backward into my room, gasping for air, but that relief was short-lived. The laughter was deafening now, swirling around me like a storm, filling every corner of the room with bleakness. I turned to face her, realizing she was not just behind me, but surrounding me. Her small form seemed to multiply, shadows merging and blending into one another. "You can't escape," she said, her voice now a chorus of sinister giggles. "You'll play with me, whether you want or not." Her voice twisted through the air, wrapping around me like an icy grip. I could feel my heart hammering wildly in my chest, a frantic rhythm echoing the terror coursing through my veins. Suddenly, the room began to shift. The familiar walls of my grandma's house melted away, morphing into the playground I had glimpsed earlier, a nightmarish version of it, where broken swings creaked in the wind and the sky above was a sickly green. Shadows darted back and forth, whispering secrets to one another as I stood frozen, unable to tear my gaze away from the chaos that unveiled before me. "Look around," the girl taunted, her laughter tinkling like shattered glass. "This is where they all came to play. Aren't you excited?" I felt the air grow thick and heavy, as if the very atmosphere was alive with malice. My skin prickled with unease, and every instinct screamed at me to run. But fear rooted me to the spot. I glanced at the playground. The swings began to sway violently, screaming as they launched into the sky with no one to occupy them. I could see the remnants of children scattered about, their laughter no longer joyous, but echoing through the shadows like a lament. The once colorful equipment was now rusted and decaying, reflecting the remnants of joy that the little girl had stolen from each of them. "Playtime's essential," she cooed, stepping closer, her lips curled into that same eerie grin. "You can't deny a playmate what they deserve. They wanted to leave too, but they learned. Soon you will join them, just like all the others." Suddenly, a chilling wind whipped through the area, and I felt cold fingers brushing against my skin. The laughter intensified, a haunting chorus of lost souls echoing all around me. I tried to shut it out, to block the sounds filling my mind, but each giggle sounded more twisted, more desperate than the last. I stumbled backward, my foot catching on something soft and yielding. I looked down in horror to see a broken doll, its once beautiful face smeared with dirt and tears, empty eyes staring up at me. I felt a wave of panic wash over me, wanting to scream as memories of the girl's words flashed through my mind. "Once you come to my playground, you belong to me." Shaking, I quickly turned, trying to find an escape, but I was surrounded. The shadows grew heavy, almost tangible, and I couldn't make sense of the chaos. Figures loomed in the dark corners, twisted shapes of what looked like children. Faces contorted in eternal misery, mouth open wide in silent screams. They watched me with hollow eyes, their expressions filled with longing and despair. "Help us," I heard one whisper, and the sound cut through the air, so raw that it sent chills running down my spine. Each lost soul reaching out with ghostly fingers, pleading for release from this hell. My breath quickened at the realization that if I didn't find a way out, I would join them. "Don't you want to play?" the girl asked softly, a mocking sweetness lacing her voice. As she spoke, I felt the shadows around me tightening like a net. I grit my teeth, summoning every shred of bravery to resist. "I will not be one of them," I shouted, but her laughter pierced me, shattering my resolve. "But you already are," she replied, her eyes gleaming. "You wanted to play, didn't you? Don't forget you came here first." As her words sank in, the ground beneath me shivered. I looked down and saw twisted roots rising out the earth, curling around my feet like serpents. Panic seized me, and I kicked desperately against them. Each twist of the roots felt like a vice tightening around my ankles, dragging me down into the icy grasp of the ground. "Let go!" I screamed, but my voice was swallowed by the laughter that reverberated around me. The children in the shadows began to close in, their forms flickering in the dim light. I could see the desperation in their translucent faces, their silent pleas mirroring the fear in my heart. It was as if they were echoing my fate. "Join us. Be free," they urged, their voices melding into a soothing harmony that felt like a sinister lullaby. I shuddered, shaking my head violently. "No, I must escape." Retreating backward, I clawed at the ground, desperately trying to free myself. Just then, I heard something, a soft humming. It was faint at first, a melody that seemed to resonate deep within me, sending a wave of warmth through the icy grip of the shadows. "What is that?" I wondered, my fear momentarily replaced with curiosity. The girl stopped, her smile faltering as she glanced around, uncertainty flickering in her eyes. "No, you can't listen to that," she screamed, fear dripping from her voice, and it made every hair on my body stand on end. With new strength surging through me, I pushed against the roots, feeling them weaken as I lunged toward the source of the humming. I ran, the shadows swirling and howling behind me, frantic in their attempt to reclaim me. Each thud of my heart echoed in my ears, urging me forward through the playground of lost souls, the laughter turning to wails of fury. Closer and closer, I followed the sound, and then I saw it, an old, cracked merry-go-round in the center of the playground. A warm light poured from it, inviting and radiant against the chaos around. Somehow I knew it was the way out. "You can't go there," the girl screeched, her once playful demeanor slipping into something feral and angry. "You don't belong. Get away." But with each step forward, I could feel the roots retreating, the shadows scattering as they dimmed in the light. I reached the merry-go-round, breathless and filled with determination. "This is my escape," I shouted, grasping the cold metal with both hands. The light enveloped me, wrapping around me like a cocoon. I felt warmth flood into my bones, driving away the coldness, illuminating every dark corner in my mind. "No," came the chorus of her voice, echoed by the agonized cries of the lost children. Their faces twisted in sorrow, failure sparked in their luminous eyes. Yet I felt hope burgeoning within me. I knew this was my moment, my chance to break free. I closed my eyes and turned the merry-go-round, spinning it faster and faster, feeling the world around me dissolve into pure light. The laughter and wails merged into one, a hurricane of sound that pulled at my heartstrings as I spun away from the darkness. As I spun the merry-go-round faster, the world around me began to blur and dissolve into a whirlwind of colors. Bright reds and greens mixed with shadows, the laughter of children serving as a haunting melody. I could feel the weight of the darkness trying to pull me back, the girl's furious screams echoing around me. "I won't let you go," she yelled, her voice sharp and desperate. I gripped the cold metal bar tighter, feeling a mix of fear and determination surging through me. My heart raced, pumping adrenaline that pushed me to keep spinning to escape this nightmare. The shadows around me grew wild, swirling like angry smoke. I shut my eyes tightly, focusing solely on the light and the joyful memories of playing outside, running with friends, and the warmth of laughter. I could almost visualize the faces of those who loved me, pulling me closer to reality, away from the dread surrounding me. As I spun, the cries of the children morphed into a low wail. I didn't know if they were begging for my help or warning me of the darkness closing in. The shadows were relentless, reaching out toward me like twisted hands, desperate to pull me back into their cold embrace. I felt them graze my skin, icy fingers leaving, trails of frost along my arms, a reminder of the fate that awaited if I faltered. With every frantic revolution, I felt time stretching and warping. The scene shifted. The playground faded into a cavernous black void, the merry-go-round, my only anchor to a world not consumed by despair. I could still hear the echoes of their laughter, but now they were punctuated by sobs and cries of anguish, each note a reminder of the darkness I was trying to escape. Suddenly, the merry-go-round jerked, sputtering and slowing, as if it had grown tired of my desperate escape. I gasped, panic flooding my system, realizing the shadows had begun to solidify, forming grotesque shapes that swarmed closer. "You can't escape. You're mine," the girl screamed, her voice sharper than glass. In that moment, I spotted something strange, a shimmering doorway behind the spinning metal. It flickered, barely visible against the chaos around me, a small sliver of hope. "Please, just let me reach it," I whispered to myself, determination rising like a flame within. I pushed with every ounce of strength. My legs felt like lead as I gritted my teeth and forced myself to keep the merry-go-round spinning, my heart pounding in time with the whirring sound of its motion. I could feel the shadows coiling around my ankles, tightening their grip, each second bringing me closer to the abyss. As the light from the doorway flickered brighter, the shadows shrieked, their voices overlapping in a cacophony of rage. The dark figures morphed and twisted, faces appearing in anguish, mouths wide as they cried for release. "Join us! It's better here," they echoed, their words like a taunt, trying to lure me into their grasp. But I was no longer afraid. Something inside me ignited, fueled by the determination to survive. "I won't let you take me," I shouted back, my voice rising above the din, powering through the darkness. It felt as though the very air crackled with tension, the shadows recoiling for a brief moment, as if my defiance caught them off guard. As I fought against their grasp, I willed myself forward, every muscle straining against the onslaught of cold. The doorway pulsed with light, calling to me like a siren song. Just a little closer. I stretched my arm out, feeling warmth drawing me in, a magnet to safety. Then, in an instant, everything flipped. The merry-go-round lurched violently, throwing me off balance. Time slowed, and my world became a blur, shadows grasping at me. But I fought against their pull. With one last push, I leapt toward the shimmering door, my body propelled by raw instinct. And then everything erupted in light. I was falling through the doorway, the brightness wrapping around me like a comforting blanket. But before I could fully grasp what was happening, an icy hand clamped around my wrist, pulling me back. I gasped in horror as the girl appeared just behind me, her grip unyielding, her eyes illuminated with rage. "You're not leaving. You're mine," she shrieked, her voice piercing through the disorienting light. I felt myself being torn between two worlds, one of light and one of darkness. Panic surged through me as she yanked me back, her strength overwhelming. I managed a desperate cry, "Let me go," and for the briefest moment, I felt her grip falter. I twisted my body, using every ounce of strength to break free. In that instant, I propelled myself forward, lunging into the very heart of the light. The shadows roared, a sound that rattled my bones as I felt the liberating warmth envelop me. I tumbled through, landing violently on the grass outside my grandma's house, gasping for breath. But something was wrong. The landscape felt eerily familiar, yet wrong. My surroundings flickering like an old film being rewound. I looked around, my heart racing again. The sun cast an unsettling light, shadows stretching longer than they should, distorting reality. Up above, the sky was a tumultuous gray, clouds swirling ominously. I scrambled to my feet, panic rising anew as I realized slowly that the playground was still there, standing ominously at the edge of my vision. With dread pooling in my stomach, I turned back, my breath hitching as I confirmed what I feared. In the distance, I could see the girl standing on the edge of the playground, but now she was different. Her once innocent face was twisted and shrouded in darkness, an aura of wrath radiating around her. "You can't leave me forever," she hissed, her voice a low growl that sent chills down my spine. "You'll come back. They always do." I felt the weight of her gaze piercing through me, a promise of terror that I could not shake. The playground seemed to pulse with anticipation, the shadows waving like fingers beckoning to me. I could hear their whispers, soft and enticing, wrapping around my mind. "Come play," they beckoned, echoing the girl's earlier words, as if the world itself was conspiring against me. Desperation clawed at my throat as I took a step back, instinct screaming at me to run. I turned and dashed down the familiar path, heart racing. I didn't dare look back. I could feel her presence trailing behind me, a darkness that threatened to swallow my very essence whole. But the more I ran, the closer the playground felt, as if it was pulling at me like a sinister magnet. Somehow, I knew I hadn't escaped. I had only delayed what was bound to happen. As I tore down the street, breathless and terrified, I realized that no matter where I went, the playground remained within reach, lurking just under the surface of my vision. And all the while, I could feel the girl watching, waiting for me to return. I didn't dare look back. Even as I felt a chill crawling up my spine, each step pounding on the pavement like a death knell. The air thickened with tension, wrapping around me like a shroud, and I could hear the whispers rising behind me. Soft at first, skimming the edges of my hearing, but soon loud enough to resonate in my mind. "Come back," they beckoned, weaving through the air with a hypnotic quality. "We're waiting for you. You'll play with us again." My heart pounded harder, and I pushed myself to run faster. The houses around me blurred into a static image of familiarity, but it felt wrong. Something shifted in the world, a sense of dread hanging over me like an iron cloud. I darted down the street, legs heavy as if the ground beneath me was pulling me down. It felt like a dream where fighting back only made you slower, where each effort to escape was met with a sly smile from the shadows. I rounded the corner, taking deep, frantic breaths, desperate for solid ground beneath me. The neighborhood seemed alive. The trees leaned in closer, their branches twisting almost menacingly against the sky. Leaves rustled, whispering secrets that I didn't want to hear. Every sound morphed into a chilling echo as I ran. The rhythmic beat of my shoes on concrete echoed louder, mixing with my rapid heartbeat. Suddenly, I stumbled upon a park, one I didn't recognize yet felt a deep sense of familiarity with. It was just like the playground, but larger, filled with towering shadows and rusting equipment that seemed to call out to me, begging me to join. The swing sets creaked slowly, a haunting lullaby that lured me toward its darkness. My skin prickled, and panic coursed through me as I stood frozen at the entrance, caught in a tug-of-war between fear and an unsettling curiosity. Within the park's confines, the atmosphere changed drastically. The air grew colder, the light dimmer, as if the sun had made a pact with the shadows. I glanced over my shoulder, half expecting to see the girl, but it was the playground that caught my eye, standing defiantly at the heart of the park, inviting yet foreboding. I hesitated, unable to turn away from the promise of play that hung in the air. "Don't run," I whispered to myself, taking a trembling step forward. Each stride felt heavier than the last, drawing me into the park where the playground stood defiantly, shimmering under patchy beams of dim light. Even the grass beneath me was different, almost spongy, as if it had soaked up something darker than just rain. The merry-go-round stood still and silent, glinting in the low light, but I could still feel its energy pulsing from afar, the same one that had drawn me earlier. "You'll come play," I heard again, this time softer, almost sweet, like a song that promised adventure but hinted at peril. Deep inside, a voice cautioned me to leave, yet the pull was magnetic, a siren song that tugged at the strings of my curiosity. Before I could think rationally, I took a few steps closer. The wooden swings creaked under the weight of an invisible presence, swaying gently as if someone had just gotten off them. What if I just looked? I thought. What harm could come from just one glance? I edged nearer, my heart hammering a frantic rhythm in my chest. And then I saw it. The girl's face peeking from behind the slide, her eyes gleaming like polished stones and a sinister smile stretching across her lips. I knew you couldn't resist, she called, her voice lilting like a child's, yet laced with something dangerous. Unease settled deep in my stomach as I stepped back instinctively. But it was too late. She was there, stepping into the light, the darkness around her seeming to pulse with life. "Play with me," she beckoned, holding out her tiny hand with outstretched fingers, begging yet demanding. "I want to get away from here," I murmured, my words barely breaking free of my throat under the weight of her gaze. Her smile widened, revealing glimmers of sharp teeth. "You think you can?" Suddenly, shadows surged past me, clawing at my feet as mist swirled around like cold smoke. I turned to flee, nearly tripping over unseen roots creeping across the park's surface. The air became electric, buzzing with anticipation, as if the very ground was alive and aware of my presence. Each step I took sent vibrations through the earth, chasing the shadows away, but drawing the girl closer. I darted back towards the park's entrance, my breath hitching as the laughter once again echoed in the air. Panic fueled my legs, urging me to sprint faster. But the park seemed endless, stretching on, the exit fading as I plunged deeper into its heart. "You can't escape," she shrieked, her voice a chilling reminder of how close the darkness lurked. I felt it wrap around me, tightening like a noose as I stumbled onto a small bridge leading over a dark, stagnant pond. The water glimmered unnaturally, a deceptive mirror reflecting an unholy light. I stopped in my tracks, feeling an overwhelming urge to look into its depths, as if it held the key to my escape. Taking a deep breath, I leaned closer, peering into the murky water. What I saw sent visceral fear racing through my veins. Reflections of the children I'd glimpsed before stared back, distorted and warped. They were trapped within the depths, their hands pressed against the surface as if trying to break free from the watery prison, their faces twisted in silent screams of despair. "Help us," they mouthed, their voices thin as spider silk, resonating in my head, urging me to reach down and save them. But their eyes glinted with something more, that same obsession I'd seen in the girl. I jerked back, heart racing, realizing that this was no ordinary water. It was saturated with grief and darkness, a trap waiting to ensnare the unwary. The girl laughed again, a sound so sickly sweet it turned my stomach. "They're my friends. They just want to have fun like we do." Her eyes glittered with an insane light, tugging at my sanity. I felt the urge to scream, to break through the fog clouding my mind, but fear pushed those thoughts deep down. "Stay away from the water," I managed to shout, my voice cracking under the pressure. But her laughter continued to echo, distorted by the shadows surrounding us. The ground began to tremble beneath me, and the shadows convulsed, reaching for me once more. I had to run. I had to escape, with every ounce of strength left in my weary body. As I reached the trees, a sense of relief washed over me like a warm blanket, though it was short-lived. The shadows around the park grew denser, swallowing the light as I stepped into the ever-encroaching darkness of the forest. The air was heavy, thick with the scent of damp earth and decay that clung to my skin, making me shiver. Each step I took crunched beneath my feet, the sound echoing like a warning in the stillness. The trees loomed tall, their branches clawing at the sky. But as I ventured deeper, they also seemed to curve over me like a cage, trapping me in an unsettling embrace. I could feel the eyes of the darkness watching, lurking just beyond the tree line, as if waiting for the perfect moment to strike. My heart raced as I pressed forward, determined to escape the nightmare behind me. But whispers began to rise again, drifting between the trees. "Stay with us," they crooned, soft and insistent, intertwining with the rustle of leaves. The hauntingly sweet tone made my skin crawl, sending a jolt of terror through my veins. "Leave me alone!" I yelled, but my voice quivered, mingling with the unsettling echoes that circled around me. A low chuckle came from the shadows, a sound that made my gut twist. I quickened my pace, every instinct screaming at me to press on. I stumbled over an exposed root, nearly falling as I tried to regain my balance. Just as I steadied myself, I heard a faint giggle, delicate and childlike, yet steeped in malevolence. My breath caught as I spun around, anxiety spiraling within me, scanning the dark corners of the forest. The light was fading, the day rapidly shifting into night, casting long shadows that writhed among the trees as if alive. Every rustle seemed amplified. The branches scratching against one another created a rhythm that felt like a heartbeat, growing faster, louder, as if the forest itself was aware of my fear. I pressed on, desperately searching for a way out. Each moment felt like it stretched into eternity. Then I saw it, a flickering light deep within the trees, glowing like a beacon. My heart leaped at the sight, hope igniting against the oppressive darkness. Maybe someone's there, I thought, urging my legs to move faster toward the distant glow. But as I approached, the light shifted from a warm hue to something more sinister, flickering like a dying flame. I stopped suddenly, sensing a presence that sent chills curling up my spine. "You're so close," came a whisper, floating through the stillness and wrapping around me like a tendril, pulling me toward the light. I froze, my instincts battling against curiosity, knowing full well this could be a trap. Yet, another part of me felt an inexplicable pull, urging me forward to discover the source of the glow. I took a cautious step closer, and as I did, the shadows seemed to roil with excitement. The light pulsated, reflecting off the trees, illuminating a clearing that seemed impossibly serene in contrast to the darkness surrounding it. But the moment I entered the clearing, I felt a wave of dread wash over me. It wasn't a sanctuary, but an offering, an invitation to join whatever horrors awaited me in the heart of the park. There, in the center, stood a circle of figures, their faces obscured by darkness. I could hear the gentle lilt of laughter, a melody that chilled me to the bone. My heart raced as I stepped further in, unable to resist the magnetic pull of curiosity, despite every fiber of my being screaming at me to leave. "Welcome to our game," one of the figures said, finally stepping into the light, revealing a disturbingly familiar face. It was the girl from the playground, her smile impossibly wide and stretched unnaturally as she beckoned me closer. "You've come back just like I knew you would. I don't want to play," I shouted, finding my voice, my muscles tensing as I prepared to run. But her laughter rang out, sharp and mocking, reverberating through the clearing. "It's too late for that," she said, her voice dripping with honeyed menace. The other figures moved closer, their forms shifting as the shadows wrapped around them, enhancing the grotesque features that emerged from the gloom. "You're already part of the game. Now you just have to choose." Panic bubbled within me as the realization slammed into my gut, that I was undeniably trapped. The circle closed in, and I could feel the weight of their gazes boring into me, the darkness thickening, pressing against my skin as I struggled to breathe. I had to make a decision, and the dread clawing at my insides told me it was a choice I might regret. I stood in the circle, heart pounding, fear gripping me like iron chains. The figures around me whispered in hushed tones, excitement fluttering through the air like moths drawn to a flame. "Choose wisely," the girl said, her voice dripping with a darkness that sent chills down my spine. The atmosphere thickened, filled with a sense of anticipation that was almost palpable. I looked around, trying to find a way out, but the shadows seemed to weave tighter around the circle, hiding the exit. The laughter from the figures echoed, enveloping me in an eerily familiar sound, blending into a cacophony that tugged painfully at my mind. Suddenly, the shadows twisted, taking on a life of their own. They surged forward, curling around my legs, cold tendrils pawing at my skin. "You have to play," the girl insisted, her voice now a harsh whisper. "It's your turn." I could feel the darkness creeping closer, an almost suffocating weight of dread hanging over me. Trying to push through the panic, I shouted, "No, I refuse." My own voice startled me, echoing back with a strange resonance. But instead of repulsion, the figures only leaned in closer, hungry for the show. "You can't escape the game," one figure drawled, stepping into the waning light. The edge of their face gleamed with a sickly glow, distorting their features into something grotesque. "We play until someone wins." The words hung heavy in the air, and I felt a dark laughter brewing within me, taunting me to submit to this twisted fate. In a surge of defiance, I turned and bolted, desperate to break free from their grasp. I plunged back into the trees, adrenaline pushing me forward. Branches scratched my arms, pulling at my clothes, but I pushed through the pain, focused on the frantic rhythm of my heart pounding in my ears. As I raced deeper into the woods, the whispers turned into unsettling roars behind me. Figure after figure chased me, their laughter transforming into a frenzy of sinister sounds that echoed throughout the forest, bouncing off the trees like a mocking chorus. I could feel their presence closing in, a tide of darkness that threatened to drown me. Suddenly, I tripped over an unseen root, slamming hard against the ground. Pain shot through my ankle, sending jolts of agony up my leg. I scrambled to my feet, panic coiling in my stomach as I struggled to keep running. Every breath felt sharp and hollow, each inhale mingling with the scent of moist leaves and the pungent odor of decay. "Join us," they taunted from behind, their words sharp like knives, digging deeper into my psyche. With every beat of my heart, terror clawed at me, trapping me in bondage to their darkness. I was losing precious seconds, moments where I could escape this twisted game, but the forest seemed to shift around me, changing paths and options, leading me deeper into a nightmare. Then I heard it, a familiar melody, a tune I had once thought soothing now twisted into something grotesque. "Ring around the rosy," the figures sang, their voices melding together, a dissonance that chilled my blood. I froze, recognizing what they were invoking. Childhood games morphed into chilling rituals. Panic surged as I dashed deeper into the woods, the melody following me like a dark shadow. "What do you want from me?" I screamed, the words echoing through the trees, desperate for an answer even as the whispers surrounded me, wrapping around my mind. "You already know," a voice cooed from the darkness. I turned quickly, finding the girl at the edge of the trees, her eyes glimmering with wicked delight. "You're part of the game now. You can run, but it won't change anything." The shadows danced around her, swirling and twisting, as if they were alive, reaching out with fingers made of mist. Feeling my resolve begin to crumble, I scoured the area, searching for something, anything that could save me. My gaze caught on an old tree, its gnarled roots exposed like the fingers of a long-forgotten guardian. It felt ancient, wise in ways I couldn't understand, and I decided to seek shelter among its branches. Maybe it could provide some protection against this dark force. As I dashed for the tree, I felt the shadows tightening around my legs, pulling me down. "You can't hide," the girl shouted, a sinister glee in her voice as I made my way to the wide trunk. I reached for the bark, desperately trying to clutch the rough surface for balance. My pulse raced as I felt the pressure of the darkness creeping ever closer. Just then, a sound echoed from the tree, distant laughter mingling with cries of anguish. I peered up into its branches, my breath catching. Something was shifting inside the hollow trunk. Eyes, hollow and unblinking, were staring down at me. They flickered from shadow to shadow, drawing closer with every heartbeat, and I felt my very soul begin to unravel. "Don't look at them," the forest seemed to scream, but it was too late. The eyes shimmered with an intoxicating glow, pulling me into a trance. "Come closer," a haunting voice sang, wrapping around me like thick fog. I blinked, trying to shake off the confusion, but it clung to me like a heavy mist that swallowed my resolve. The reality around me began to blur, slipping away like sand through my fingers. The girl laughed, a sound that reverberated in the hollow of the tree. and suddenly I felt threads of fear and despair wrapping tightly around my chest. I knew I had to make a choice, but every moment I hesitated drew me closer to my doom. I closed my eyes, mentally screaming for clarity. Think, I demanded of myself. Then, as if on cue, the whispers evolved. They transformed into shouts, a cacophony of voices urging me closer, begging me to join their dark festivities. I gritted my teeth, forcing myself to remember why I had started running in the first place. I will not be a pawn in this game. I screamed back against the howling wind. With renewed determination, I pushed against the darkness, feeling the pull weaken as I began to step away from the tree. I realized I had power. They wanted me, yes, but they also feared me. Drawing on that realization, I summoned every ounce of strength left in me and bolted from my place, sprinting further into the depths of the forest, desperate to escape the clutches of the shadows. But as I ran, I noticed the trees high above me were closing in, their branches interlacing like a web trapping me in a prison of nature. I stumbled, trying to navigate the maze of trunks, but panic began to creep back as the laughter surged behind me. The urgency sharpened, urging me to find a new path, a way out before the darkness caught up. The deeper I went, the more surreal the forest became. Colors morphed, shapes twisted, and trees contorted into grotesque versions of their former selves, their bark rippling like flesh. I could hear the figures getting closer, their song morphing into a frantic melody, a desperate chant that sent chills down my spine. "Come back to us, come play," they cried in unison, the sound swelling around me as I raced through the thickening shadows. But somewhere within me, a flicker of hope ignited. I remembered the light, the flickering glow I had seen earlier. Maybe if I could reach it, I could turn the tides against the darkness and free myself from their grip. Focusing on that thought, I pushed through the underbrush, every fiber of my being determined to break free from the curse that had ensnared me. I pushed forward, the soft earth beneath my feet squelching with each desperate step. The flickering light loomed ahead, a beacon amidst the confusion of branches and shadow. My heart raced erratically in my chest, each thump resonating with a primal urgency, shouting that I had to reach it. Suddenly, the whispering grew louder, forming a ghostly chorus that filled the air around me. I could see shapes darting in the corners of my vision, blurs that could have been the figures or something far worse, and I fought against the icy grip of despair lurking in the pit of my stomach. "You can't escape us," they called out, voices blending into a cacophony of malice that made my skin crawl. A shiver ran down my spine as I stumbled forward, desperately straining to keep my eyes locked on the glowing light. It flickered tantalizingly, at times fading into a dull glow before solidifying again. I could feel dread pooling in my gut. The shadows pressed in, wanting to swallow me whole, their whispers turning into taunts that echoed through my mind. The trees began to thrum, a low humming that vibrated through the ground and into my bones. "Join us? Stay with us," they whispered with an unnerving amount of insistence, sounding almost affectionate, yet threatening in the same breath. I shook my head, trying to drown out their voices, focusing solely on reaching that light. If only I could just get there. Finally, the thick underbrush cleared, and I found myself at the edge of a small clearing. My breath hitched, and emotion surged within me. The light illuminated the area like an ethereal glow, casting shades of pale yellow and green across the leaves. In the center, an ancient tree stood, more majestic than any I had encountered. Its trunk seemed to pulse with energy, catching my attention. I felt drawn to its presence, an almost magnetic pull urging me to step closer. But the moment I did, the laughter behind me erupted into a manic frenzy. "Don't you dare," they shrieked, their voices now frantic and filled with rage, piercing through the air like shards of glass. I could sense their desperation, realizing they had lost control of the game, and I was pulling away. Hearts racing, I approached the ancient tree, desperate to find answers, hoping it could provide a source of protection. Its bark was rough, knotted with age, I braced my hand against it, feeling a pulse, a rhythm that matched my own heart's frantic beat. As I connected with it, a surge of energy coursed through me, almost intoxicating, washing away some of the bleak fear I had felt. Suddenly, the shadows recoiled, flickering like candles caught in a storm. I felt strength flowing through my veins, like the roots of the tree were intertwining with my own, giving me a connection to the energy that pulsed around me. But just as quickly, the laughter turned dark once more, twisting into howls of anger that vibrated through the air, pulling me back to the present terror. "You think you can hide?" the girl yelled, her voice sharp and unyielding, striking me like a whip. "You belong to us. You are part of our game now." The tendrils of shadow began to writhe, seeking me out, encircling the tree. It was as if the very essence of the forest was rejecting them, fighting against their suffocating presence. The shadows began to creep closer, their edges curling around the roots of the tree, trying to reclaim their lost hold. I could feel the energy around me shifting, pulsating like a heartbeat, strengthening with every breath I took. I had to tap into it, to wield its power. Taking a deep breath, I closed my eyes, summoning every ounce of will within me to channel the warmth that surged through my fingertips. "Leave me alone!" I shouted, pouring all my fear and anger into those words. The moment they left my lips, the ground quaked beneath me, and a blinding flash erupted from the tree, illuminating the clearing in brilliant light. The shadows shrieked, a sound that rattled my bones and chilled me to the core. Their forms warped and stretched, flinging back into the darkness from which they came, recoiling from the shimmering light as though it was a painful reminder of what they had lost. I opened my eyes, heart racing, glancing around to see the girls' faces twisted in fury while they were forced to retreat. Their shadowy forms writhed and flickered against the light, but even still, I knew they wouldn't give up easily. This wasn't over. They would come back, they always did. But for now, I had a moment of respite. The energy of the tree surged beneath my hands, a living thing that breathed with power. "What do you want?" I asked, my voice trembling despite the surrounding warmth. I could almost sense the ancient spirit within the tree, ready to share its wisdom if I only had the courage to listen. To break free, a soft voice floated into my mind, filling the air around me. To embrace the light, the darkness cannot thrive where hope exists. You must choose. Reality slammed back into me with overwhelming clarity. I was at a crossroads, a choice that could alter everything. With the shadows momentarily held at bay, I had the chance to gather my strength, to fight back against the darkness. But what if I couldn't? The lingering thought nagged at me. What if I was meant to be theirs, trapped in a never-ending game of horror? As I contemplated, glancing back at the shadows swirling at the edge of the clearing, I noticed something strange flickering within the dark. Shapes began to emerge, coalescing into figures that began stepping toward me again. Backup had arrived. I could see their twisted expressions contorting as they charged forward, ready to reclaim me, determined to drag me back into their suffocating clutches. "Hold on," I thought desperately, retreating further into the embrace of the ancient tree. I took a deep breath, centering myself, as every drop of resolve I had flooded into my fingertips, pulling light from the tree. "You won't take me," I shouted, and in that moment a brilliant burst of energy erupted outward, engulfing the clearing in blinding light. The explosion of light pushed back the encroaching shadows, momentarily halting their advance. I could feel its power vibrating through my bones, a force both comforting and fierce. "This is your chance," a voice whispered softly in my mind, urging me to act. And I fought to remain grounded against the chaos of the moment. But just as quickly as the light surged, I felt a chilling pressure pushing back against it, a dark force that clawed at the edges, threatening to swallow the glow whole. The figures, shadows warped into hideous shapes, screamed in defiance. "You think you can escape us?" they called, a chorus of distorted voices that echoed my fear, a chant of despair that reverberated within my skull. I grasped the energy flowing through me, a brilliant force that pulsed like a heartbeat, urging me onward. I raised my hands, channeling the light with determination. "I won't let you take me," I cried out, flooding the space with a brilliant golden glow that pushed against the darkness. The blinding light surged once again, and the shadows emitted howls of rage, twisting and writhed as if they were caught in a storm. I could see features flickering, masquerades of familiar faces, each contorted with malice. Their eyes glinted with an otherworldly hunger, a lust for despair that sent a pang of terror coursing through me. I narrowed my focus on that ancient tree, pulling more energy from its depths. "You can't trap me in this game," I screamed, pouring every ounce of my willpower into the light, praying it would be enough. The air crackled with tension, each heartbeat a reminder of the fight ahead. But the shadows pushed back harder, merging into a roiling mass that shielded the figures, enhancing their spectral forms. They lunged forward, and just like that, the bright glow flickered, dimming as fear clawed at my senses. Somewhere deep within me, a feeling of hopelessness started to creep back in, whispering that this battle was far from over. As the darkness drew closer, I could feel icy fingers reaching for my ankles, anchoring me in place. Panic surged again, and I felt myself slipping, uncertainty threatening to drown me. I remembered the presence within the tree, the wisdom I had sensed earlier. Maybe if I focused on it, I could awaken something even more powerful. "Help me!" I cried out, desperate for a sign, a shred of hope in this suffocating darkness. In response, the air around me sparked, and the trees seemed to hum with life. The light flared brighter, enveloping me entirely, forming a protective barrier against the shadows. Whispers filled my ears, not of despair, but of tales from long ago. "Light conquers darkness. Embrace your strength." The figures spiraled back, their forms screaming in agony as the glow expanded further, shining brilliantly. I could feel my spirit lifting, strength returning, and suddenly I understood. I wasn't just fighting for myself, but for the promise of freedom. "You can't take me," I bellowed again, no longer afraid, my voice echoing with newfound power. The very ground beneath me shook with each word, leaving a tremor in the air, amplifying the light around me. The figures stumbled back, disoriented by the intensity, the light becoming tangible, nearly solid, a wall against the encroaching worries. But that dark voice persisted, rising above the chaos. "This is just the beginning. You can never escape." Panic flared once more, but I steadied myself against it. No more. I had come too far to back down now. Taking a deep breath, I summoned the warmth of the ancient tree again and pushed it outwards like a beacon. The ground shattered beneath the weight of their fury, splitting open, threatening to swallow everyone in darkness. But instead, my light illuminated the fissure, revealing twisted roots and bones clutching at the earth. This was it. This was where their power originated. A dark heart that demanded fear and captured souls in a never-ending cycle. "That's where you belong," I whispered, heart pounding, focusing on the energy radiating from the resilient tree. I concentrated entirely on that exposed darkness, pulling strength from the very essence of the earth. "You're not welcome here," I shouted, and the words rang out with authority, sending shockwaves through the ground. A brilliant wave of energy erupted from me, spiraling towards the opening, consuming everything in its path. The shadows writhed, twisting and screaming as they fought against the brilliance of my light. I saw faces contorting into monstrous looks of anger and desperation. Every shout fueled me more, igniting the power within that flowed from the tree. I focused intently as the darkness swirled around the fissure, closing in. The tree's energy embraced my spirit, pushing me into action, and I felt the very fabric of reality shift around me. "Be gone," I commanded, as the wave met the dark heart of the shadows. There was a blinding flash. The world around me exploded in a whirl of colors as chiaroscuro fused into light. I was lifted off the ground, surrounded by warmth and power, unable to distinguish which part of me was fear and which was strength. Then, in a single heartbeat, everything ceased. There was silence, a heavy void that enveloped me. I floated through an ethereal space, suspended, uncertain of what was real and what was merely imagination. With a shudder, I blinked, and when I opened my eyes, the clearing lay still before me. The ancient tree pulsed gently, its light a calming glow against the encroaching night. I felt weak, but remarkably alive. But the shadows were not gone. I could feel their presence still lurking at the edges of the clearing, frustrated and vengeful, waiting for an opportunity to strike back. I was aware of their watchful eyes now more than ever, hungry for revenge. They wouldn't let this go easily. It would only be a matter of time before they regrouped. Glancing around, my eyes drifted to the pulsating tree. It seemed to whisper now, and I wondered if it might have the knowledge I needed to confront whatever came next. Every heartbeat resonated in my chest as I considered what I could do, how I could turn this light against the darkness once more. "You have the power," the voice echoed softly, "but you must embrace it fully." I took another breath, letting the warmth flood through every part of me. And as I did, instinctively, I placed my palm against the rough bark once more, allowing the connection to deepen. Memories flooded my mind, ancient whispers tracing back through time, tales of past guardians who had fought battles just like mine. I saw flashes of victories, shadows vanquished, and light fueled by hope and determination. You're not just fighting for yourself, a new thought crystallized within me. You're fighting for every soul they've taken. The shadows danced at the edges, their rage palpable. But now, I didn't feel alone anymore. I had the strength of countless warriors behind me, and I realized it was time to not just defend, but to attack. "I will not back down," I said, each word firm and unwavering. As I gathered myself, the energy from the tree fused with my own, creating a formidable force. The darkness wasn't merely a threat, it was a test, and I had the light of countless past guardians to guide me forward. Taking a step into the clearing, I envisioned the light emanating from me like a beacon piercing through the darkness. I could feel the moment I crossed that threshold, the shadows pulsing, recoiling. They could sense me growing stronger, and I refused to let fear dictate my actions any longer. With determination kindling within me, I pressed forward, ready to face the shadows head-on. They would not take my fear. I would reclaim what was lost. With every step I took, the shadows began to pulse menacingly, swirling around me like a living mist. Their whispers reached out tendrils of dark energy clawing at the edges of my mind, trying to draw me back into fear. "You can't fight us," they hissed, voices dripping with malice. "You don't belong here." But I felt the warmth of the trees, energy coursing through me, a proactive shield against their taunts. I took a deep breath, grounding myself in the moment, refusing to let their darkness seep into my heart. I was more than I had been moments before, a guardian, a fighter, and I had the light on my side. In that electrified silence, the surrounding shadows shifted, revealing amorphous shapes that writhed and twisted as if they couldn't find solid form. They flickered in and out of focus, faces breaching through the darkness, eyes wide and hungry, mouths twisting into mocking smiles. Each time I met a gaze, a feeling of dread swept over me, a recognition that their greed for my fear only made them stronger. Gripping the energy the tree shared with me, I focused on making it radiate outward, forming a shimmering halo of light that pushed the darkness aside. I could feel the shadows recoil, shrinking back as if the light was a blade slicing through their form. "You cannot hold me back," I stated, my voice firm and unwavering as I took another cautious step forward. But that's when I noticed a flicker of movement behind the twisting figures. Something else was lurking, hidden in the folds of darkness like a predator waiting to pounce. My heart raced, pulses of fear unraveling threads of resolve, but I forced myself to look closer. Soon, the flicker coalesced into form, a tall silhouette that stepped from behind the shadows. A figure cloaked in darkness, its features obscured, emerged, shrouded in a veil that appeared to swallow the light. "You think you shine so bright," it rumbled, a voice sonorous and deep, resonating through the clearing, vibrating the very air around me. "You're merely a flicker in the expanse of night." A chill ran down my spine, realizing this was a different kind of threat, one that emanated a powerful aura of control. With every word it uttered, I could feel my strength waver as doubts began to creep back in. What if it was right? What if my light was nothing but a momentary glimpse of hope doomed to fade away? "Embrace the shadows," the figure continued, stepping closer, the darkness swirling at its feet as if alive. "They can protect you. Together, we can unleash the power hidden inside." It reached out a hand, fingers elongated and twisted unnaturally, beckoning to me with a promise that dripped with deceit. Panic surged within me, and I took a step back, shaking my head furiously. "No, I won't drown in your darkness." The words burst forth, stronger than the fear gripping my heart. With that declaration, I felt the energy of the tree respond, thundering within me as if reaffirming my resistance. The figure's facade cracked, and anger flashed in its eyes, a turbulent storm of dark hues swirling behind. "Foolish child," it howled, and in that moment, shadows around me surged forth, attempting to wrap around my limbs. I could feel the edges growing cold, and I recoiled as tendrils of darkness brushed against my skin. "Get away!" I cried aloud, pushing back with every bit of light I could muster. The warm energy thrummed through me, bolstering my resolve as I thrust my hands outward. "I choose the light." The moment the shadows collided with my light, a jarring scream erupted, echoing through the clearing. The cloaked figure writhed, its form dissolving into tendrils of darkness that flailed and twisted against the radiance I produced. "No, this isn't how it ends," it shouted, fury bubbling over as it began to retreat. But I couldn't let up. I stepped forward, driving the energy deeper into the shadows, forcing its hold to break. The ground shook beneath me as the release rippled through the ether, shadows screaming and dissipating, caught in the radiant light that swirled from me like a vibrant storm. "You will never win," I declared, heart racing, adrenaline pumping, my own voice echoing through the clearing as I pressed forward. Moments felt like hours, each heartbeat a reminder that time was slipping away, and I needed to act before the dark figure regained its strength. Just as the darkness began to coalesce again, shadows crawling back from the edges, I focused entirely on that pulsing energy from the ancient tree. "Guide me," I invoked, and the warmth enveloped my shaking body, providing an anchor in a sea of chaos. The surrounding air crackled, growing heavy with anticipation as the invisible barriers started to dissolve. I reached out again, extending my hands toward the heaving mass of darkness. "I know you fear the light," I shouted, pushing the energy forward. The pure brilliance surged once more, cascading against the shadows like a tidal wave, the colors swirling in a kaleidoscope of brilliance. The twisted figure erupted into a cacophony, blurred faces screaming in horror as they thrashed against the light's unyielding onslaught. "You are nothing," it shrieked, unforgettable fury lacing its voice, but I felt empowered by the resolve surging through me. In that moment, I saw a vivid vision flash before my eyes, the souls of those lost, trapped in the veil of darkness, eyes pleading for freedom. "I got to do this," I thought, and something deep within me unlocked. With a determined heart, I concentrated fiercely, channeling all the energy of the tree and all the light I had within me. "This ends now," I yelled, and a torrent of brilliance burst forth, splitting the night sky as it surged toward the dark figure. With one final, earth-shattering scream, the figure was engulfed, shadows evaporating into nothingness, its malignant power fading from existence. The clearing erupted in blinding light, forcing me to shield my eyes, and for a moment, all I could feel was peace, the overwhelming sensation that I had triumphed. But the echoes of that victory hung heavy, and as I regained my sight, I saw the remnants of the shadows flickering at the edges, slithering back into the depths of the forest. I knew better than to believe this was over. They would come again, that unyielding darkness always lurking, but something within me had shifted. The ancient tree shimmered, a robust guardian standing tall amidst the chaos, and I could feel that it had shared its secret, strengthening me in ways I couldn't yet understand. I realized I had a choice. I could run again, or I could stand my ground, prepared to face whatever nightmares awaited me. Determined, I stepped back to the tree, placing my hand upon its trunk, feeling an electric jolt of energy rush through me. "I will not run," I whispered. "Together, we will face them down." And in that vow, I felt the tree respond, a deep rumble vibrating beneath my feet, as if to reaffirm our connection. My heart pounded with a mix of fear and courage, knowing that whatever came next, I would stand with this ally by my side. With resolve pumping through my veins, I took a deep breath, feeling the support of the ancient tree grounding me as I scanned the clearing, searching for any signs of lingering shadows. The air felt tense, charged with an unspoken promise that the battle might not be over yet. I could still sense the presence watching from the dark corners, and the hairs on my neck prickled, a reminder that danger was never far away. As I stood there, unease began to creep back in. The melding voices of the shadows whispered and slithered at the edges of my thoughts, growing louder, taunting me as they stirred. "You think you've won?" A familiar voice echoed, twisted and cold. It sounded just like that cloaked figure, mocking my courage, as if suggesting that the light only provided an illusion of safety. "Go away!" I shouted into the darkness, a futile attempt to ward off their suffocating presence. Yet deep down, I recognized I could not merely shout away the shadows. I had to confront whatever it was that hid within. With that revelation, a plan began to form in my mind, a desperate strategy to draw the darkness out into the open, where I could truly battle it. The clearing felt too quiet now, the slightest rustle of leaves echoing like thunder in this eerie stillness. I turned my gaze toward the encompassing trees, their branches swaying uneasily, as if warning me. I needed to create an opportunity. I began to walk along the boundary of the clearing, the cosmic undercurrent of fear ebbing and flowing with every step. "Come out!" I called, forcing confidence into my voice, even as my heart raced wildly. The shadows flickered momentarily, and then I saw it. A shape flitted through the trees, just at the corner of my vision, disappearing before I could clearly focus. A shiver ran down my spine. It was not just a trick of the light. I pressed on, knowing I had to provoke them and lure them from their hiding places. I gathered my strength, channeling the warmth of the tree into my palms. A soft, golden glow began to pulse between my fingers, flickering like a distant star. "I know you're there," I yelled into the encroaching night, my challenge echoing off the trees. "Face me." The shadows responded, swirling more intensely, forming undulating shapes that seemed to twist and distort in sync with my heartbeat. One dark figure darted close, a flash of movement that made my body tense. It paused just out of reach, a haunting silhouette with eyes that glowed a faint red, staring hungrily, as if contemplating my very essence. "Not here," it whispered, its tones slithering like smoke. "You're not ready yet." The air thickened with dread, and I could feel the pull of that dark energy trying to envelop me, drowning me in despair. But I couldn't let them get inside my mind. "I am ready," I rebutted, heart pounding furiously. "You don't control me." The words erupted from my lips, fueled by the resolute connection I shared with the tree. The light in my palms grew stronger, illuminating the dark corners of the clearing with a golden halo. Just then, the darkness exploded forth, and I faced an onslaught of shadows swirling around me like a tornado. I felt an icy grip encircle my arm, pulling me into the void. A collective chill slashed through me, and I fought against the encroaching tendrils, trying to maintain my hold on the light within. But they were relentless. "You're nothing without us. You will see." Their voices howled, a cacophony meant to break me apart. I could feel their anguish stirring within, growing desperate as the shadows loomed closer, pushing and pulling at my resolve. Blind panic flared, but I squeezed my eyes shut, focusing instead on that connection with the tree. "Help me!" I cried inwardly, searching for the pulse of ancient strength that surged within. I willed that energy to rise. I could hear the heartbeat of the earth beneath my feet, reminding me I wasn't alone. The air sparkled, and I opened my eyes, feeling my senses sharpen. The shadows flickered, their hold on me loosening as my light radiated outward in a stunning wave. "I control my fate," I roared, and with every ounce of strength, I pushed the light further, sending it crashing into the swirling darkness. The shadows shrieked, a terrible noise rippling through the air, recoiling as if scorched by a flame. I could see the faces twist in agony, features breaking apart, trapped in the light's grasp. Fear surged within me, pushing me to unleash more, to destroy the very source of that darkness. "You're nothing here," I declared, focusing on every glowing fragment that pulsed around me. "You can't hold me back." With renewed strength, I thrust my hands forward as the light erupted from me, breaking through the swirling clouds of shadow, illuminating the forest beyond. But just as I thought victory was at hand, I was met with a sudden silence, a stillness settling over the clearing as though the very air had been sucked away. An all-consuming dread unfurled within me, an instinctual warning that something was coming, a much darker force lurking just beyond the shadows. Suddenly, everything around me grew cold, a biting chill that seeped into my bones. I felt the light tremble beneath my fingertips, and I glanced around, trying to locate the source of this chilling despair. The darkness seemed to pull back, reforming into a dense mass, gathering strength amid the shadows like a coiled serpent ready to strike. Then, rising from that center, a monstrous being materialized, more terrifying than I could have imagined. Its featureless face stared straight at me, a terrifying void that sucked the light out of the air, swirling deep inside where the shadows formed. I couldn't blink, the icy grip of dread gripping my throat, paralyzing me momentarily. "So, you wish to defy the dark?" the creature rumbled, its voice echoing around the clearing like thunder. "You are a mere child playing at power." It stepped forward, a mass of shadows entwined, revealing a gaping maw that seemed to open into an abyss, its intent clear. This was no mere shadow but a harbinger of fear itself. My heart raced with a mixture of terror and challenge. My instincts fought to take over, urging me to flee from the chilling presence. But the flicker of defiance ignited within me, intertwining with the energy from the tree. "I won't back down," I shouted, my voice sharp against the weighted silence. At the urging of that fierce resolve, I unleashed my light once more, pouring every fragmented hope into it. "This ends here," I roared as the golden glow burst forth again, filling the night with radiant fury, saturating the air with warmth that pulsed outwards, eager to combat the creeping cold. But as my light surged toward the creature, it raised an enormous shadowy arm, absorbing the light into its form with contempt, as if mocking my futile attempts. I felt the energy flicker and fade, and my stomach dropped as despair threatened to claw its way in again. Sensing my vulnerability, it lunged closer, closing the distance between us with supernatural speed, darkness enveloping everything. "You dare challenge me?" It howled, a mix of pure rage and amusement. The shadows seemed to whirl tighter around me, pulling my light down, threatening to extinguish it altogether. Desperation clawed at me, and I felt the edges of hopelessness wrap around my heart, squeezing tightly. "No!" I screamed, tearing the sensation apart. "I won't allow this." My spirit reignited. I tore at the constricting shadows, pushing against the encroaching darkness with every ounce of willpower left. "Get back!" As the light surged into the clearing, it felt like a shockwave, rattling the air and causing the shadows to recoil momentarily. My heart raced, and I could feel the heat from the energy radiating off me, the essence of the ancient tree merging with my spirit to create something powerful. I wasn't just a child anymore. I was becoming a force to be reckoned with. But the creature before me was relentless. It screamed as if furious about my defiance, the echoed sound spiraling into a spine-chilling laugh that reverberated through the night. You think you can banish the dark? You are mistaken. It raised its shadowy arms, and in an instant, the air turned icy, a thick fog, wrapping around me like a suffocating blanket, stifling my light. My breaths came heavy, a deep unease settling within. I stumbled back, feeling the tendrils of cold grasping at my limbs. It was as though the shadows were alive, gripping me tight, trying to pull me under their influence. Visions of past torment danced at the edges of my awareness. The faces of those lost to darkness, their eyes pleading and filled with despair. Pain erupted within my heart, an urgent reminder of why I was fighting, why I had to resist. But just when I felt I would be consumed, I thought of the ancient tree, the wisdom and strength that held course through me, a beacon of hope amid the chaos. I focused deeply, channeling my inner fire, pulling from the core of its power. "You don't own me," I cried out, determination ringing in my voice as I willed that warmth to expand. The shadows twitched, flickering at the edges as I twisted the energy within me, drawing warmth to counteract the cold grip. "Face the light," I shouted, and with a burst of will, I thrust my arms out, sending beams of golden light cascading toward the monstrous figure that loomed before me. But as the light struck, a chilling laughter erupted from the mouth of the creature, and for a brief instant, I froze in horror. "Light will not save you. Join the void," it hissed, and with a horrifying speed, it lunged forward, darkness spreading in a wave that threatened to engulf everything. Suddenly, the clearing darkened, and an overwhelming sense of foreboding washed over me. I staggered, feeling the world twist, shadows swirling like a living entity, pulling at my essence. Each breath became heavier, my lungs burning as if I were drowning in despair, the cacophony of whispers growing louder, drowning out my thoughts. But in that moment of despair, something inside me snapped, a vision of my own fear transformed into power. "No, I will fight," I shouted, drawing on that internal strength I had gathered, embracing both the fear and power within. With a loud cry, I ignited that energy, surging forward toward the creature that sought to consume me. But as I propelled the light, it felt as though the very air thickened in response. The shadows surged forward, currents of darkness reaching for me, almost as if they had a mind of their own. I felt a chilling grip wrap around my ankle, pulling me down into the very earth. My heartbeat thundered in my ears, a desperate beat overshadowed by the entity's hunger. With every ounce of strength, I willed myself to fight, pulling my foot free and pushing against the earth beneath me. "You will not have me," I cried, and I felt the light surge anew, a blinding radiance exploding from my core. The shadows screamed, shrill and desperate, as I pushed the energy forward like a beacon in the oppressive night, the light cutting through the dark shrouds wrapping around me. The creature roared in frustration. Its formless shape wavered under the onslaught, and it retreated momentarily, as though shocked that I would challenge it. "Foolish child," it screeched, its voice wailing in agony. "You think this battle is yours to win? The dark only sleeps." The shadows lingered, flickering at the edges of my consciousness. I was acutely aware of their potential to return, to mount a counterattack at any second. I looked around the clearing, feeling the weight of the forest closing in, the trees like sentinels ready to witness the duel. "I have to end this." I remembered the voices of the lost souls, their suffering an unbearable weight on my heart. In that moment of clarity, I understood it was not just about me. I had to fight for them. I straightened my back, taking a deep breath that ignited the light within, summoning the power that had become my shield. "You will not take anyone else," I screamed, pouring every ounce of light, I had into one concentrated beam. It swelled between my hands until it felt like a sunlit star ready to burst. The light will prevail. As that brilliant energy shot forth, the shadows writhed and twisted in horror. I could see them melt away, their haunting forms twisting into clouds of smoke, dissipating under the pressure of my determination. But suddenly, the dark figure reformed beyond the grasp of my light, an angry mass with fury in its eyes, deeper than any night I had ever seen. "You think that you are mighty?" It taunted, a wicked grin spreading across its abyssal face. The ground beneath me shook violently, and I could see cracks running through the earth like spider webs, unknown forces awakening beneath the surface. The shadows started to swirl again, gathering beneath the creature, rising like a storm of darkness, prepared to retaliate. "I won't stop," I shouted defiantly, though uncertainty crept into my voice. I could feel the earth tremble, as if the very landscape was bowing before the power that was rising. Roots and soil crumbled underfoot, creating a chaotic whirlwind of shadows that spiraled toward me, swallowing up the remnants of my light. But deep down, I understood that I had allies, and the deeper connection to the ancient tree surged again within me. Taking a deep breath, I unleashed a wave of energy that radiated outward, weaving through the chaos like threads of gold, stitching together a tapestry of light that swept across the ground. "Stand with me," I declared, calling upon every ounce of energy left. Each flicker of light I could muster elevating into a brilliant storm, spiraling outward, pushing back against the encroaching shadows. As the darkness began to retreat, I felt a shift deep down. "This is my moment," I pressed on, feeling the ground beneath my feet begin to stabilize, the chaotic energy ebbing as light wrapped around me, cocooning me from the storm beyond. But just as I thought I could catch my breath, the creature howled, summoning the last of its power. "You believe you can stop me? I am endless," it screamed, a growling roar like the very fabric of the universe tearing apart. Suddenly, the shadows collided with my radiant storm of light, a cataclysmic clash that sent shockwaves ringing through my body. I was flung backward, the air knocked from my lungs as the darkness pushed against my barrier, eager to break through. The howl of the creature bounced in the air, a cacophony against the brilliant light that surrounded me, creating an eerie balance of sound and silence. Time seemed to freeze, and the world around me faded into a terrifying quiet, a moment where both darkness and light held their ground. In that chilling silence, I heard the shift within my own heart, a pulsing heartbeat matching the rhythm of the energy that coursed through my veins. It was now or never. I felt the weight of the shadows pressing in, felt every fear coiling tightly around my heart, threatening to extinguish that flicker of hope that had driven me this far. As I felt that heartbeat syncing with the pulse of my energy, a flicker of fear tried to take hold, twisting in my gut. But in that profound silence, a strange clarity bloomed within me, like blooming flowers finding sunlight after a long winter. I stood my ground. I wasn't alone in this. The memories of those who suffered whispered strength into my soul. Just then, the shadows surged forward again, branching out like lethal vines, eager to wrap around my throat. I barely had a moment to react before they lashed out, their coldness creeping over my skin like ice water. The shadows pulsed with malevolence, reflecting every insecurity I held, every doubt that threatened to swallow me whole. "You really think you have power?" The creature's voice boomed, echoing from the darkness that enveloped me. I felt it probing for weakness, inching closer, seeking to claw at the resolve I was trying to maintain. The air seemed to thicken, laden with desperation and the heaviest kind of dread, the kind that seeps into your bones and takes root. Without warning, the ground beneath me trembled violently, and cracks appeared like gaping wounds in the earth. From these fissures, tendrils of shadow heaved upward, writhing and slobbering with dark energy, stretching out to grab hold of me. I stumbled back, fighting to keep my footing, fear racing through my veins as each tendril sought to pull me into the void. But in the chaos, I recalled the light, the bright glow that felt like home. "I will not falter," I screamed, gathering every ounce of that golden warmth within. The shadows shrieked, their cries piercing as I focused that energy, charging ahead with unyielding determination. The ground shook violently, and I felt a presence behind me like a great weight pressing down, suffocating. An ancient rustling filled the clearing, and I turned quickly, anticipating something worse. Trees twisted unnaturally, their branches clawing at the air as if they were trying to escape the horror of what was happening. The night felt alive, a dark living void waiting to swallow everything in light. "Give in!" the creature hissed through jagged teeth, its shadowy form contorting impossibly. This was not just a fight for survival, it was a battle for my very essence. Within that horrifying space, I felt the shadows becoming more desperate, their intent darkening with every inch they lost. Each scream echoed around me like a cruel reminder that I could still lose everything. In a rush of instinct, I aimed the light toward the writhing shadows, directing it like a weapon that could pierce through the suffering. As I pushed it forward, the shadows contorted, twisting in on themselves to avoid the piercing glow. I laughed in terror, sensing that I finally had the upper hand. But the creature, relentless as ever, howled in madness, and I watched as the shadows started twisting into forms. Faces that screamed with agony, eyes wide open, haunting and lost. Each face was a story, swirling with despair. And in that sickening moment, I realized these were not just shadows. They were captured souls, trapped in a dark prison of anguish. Memories flooded me, overwhelming and vivid. I could see glimpses of pain and heartache reflected in those tormented visages. "I won't allow this," I cried, shaking off the stinging cold that tried to seep back into my heart. I pushed harder, pouring light toward them, my very soul alight with conviction. As that golden brilliance spread, the faces began to shift, flickering with hope, recognition blooming amid despair. I could feel their gratitude tinged with fear, but it only momentarily distracted me. In the chaos, I underestimated the creature's wrath. "You think you can free them? They belong to me," it screamed, voice layered with distorted laughter that echoed through the clearing like a twisted symphony. The ground quaked violently, and suddenly, the shadows surged back from the edges, retaliating with ferocity. Tendrils lunged toward me, piercing and jagged, racing to reclaim their domain. I felt the chilling rush of the dark approaching, their whispers curling around my mind like smoke, igniting every fear I had ever buried. I fought against their whispers, desperately weaving the light around me into a barrier. But it felt insufficient against the monstrous willpower that surged with the shadows, fracturing that protective barrier. My thoughts tumbled in a chaotic whirlwind, paralyzing me momentarily, and I could feel the shadows' cold tendrils inch closer, their intent clear. They wanted to pull me down into their torment. "Not today!" I screamed, determination fueling every word. Channeling all my fear into energy, I redirected the light, blasting it forward with all my might. The brilliant burst illuminated the clearing, sending a wave of radiant warmth through the chilling darkness. The faces of suffering souls flickered against the night, some pleading, while others whispered warnings to flee. But the shadows shrieked in retaliation, their claws ready to snatch away what little light fought them off. The air became thick with ominous energy, heavier than before, an oppressive weight that pressed against my chest, making it harder to breathe. I could feel the darkness closing in, shifting tighter, eager to envelop me entirely. And just when I thought I might break, the whispers grew louder, coalescing into desperate cries urging me onward. The shadows writhed and recoiled, almost seeming to hesitate in their relentless pursuit, momentarily confused by my fierce resolve. Yet it was fleeting. In an instant, the creature's voice sliced through the air. "You're out of your depth, little light. Join us, and you will not feel pain." The shadows surged again, hungry and dangerously close. I felt their icy grip attempting to clutch my thoughts, invading my mind with promises of relief from suffering, whispers that tempted me to let go. "No!" I yelled, tighter than before. I locked my gaze ahead, focusing on the last remnants of despair trapped in the shadows. I flung the brilliant storm of light at them, pushing through every doubt and fear that tried to creep back. The darkness screamed, and I could feel the ground shake, as if the very being of the clearing was warring against the shadows with me. But the creature was relentless, and its ominous laugh cut. With every ounce of strength, I felt the surge of pure energy explode from me. The light cascaded over the clearing like a tidal wave, reflecting off the twisted branches and illuminating the forest in brilliant, golden hues. It was a dazzling sight, the kind that filled the heart with warmth. But underneath lurked an unsettling truth. The darkness was still there, waiting, lurking just outside my grasp. As the radiant blast pushed back the shadows, a thunderous roar reverberated through the air. The creature's form wavered, twisting in agony, its features distorting grotesquely. Strange shadows flickered, contorting as if they were alive, reaching out for any crack in my newfound barrier. The ground shook violently beneath my feet, sending tremors through the trees. I felt momentarily destabilized, my focus wavering against the chaos of the night. "You think you can rid yourself of me?" the creature screeched, the pitch rising to a cacophony that sent chills racing up my spine. Everything around me trembled. The night air started to congeal with a suffocating dread. I sensed the shadows consolidating, growing denser, pooling together like a living entity eager to reclaim their lost territory. And then, they surged again, a tidal wave of darkness threatening to consume me whole. I could see the tendrils stretching out, each one flickering with rage, clawing for my very essence. The shadows began to absorb the light, twisting and devouring it, greedily swallowing fragments of my strength. For every burst of brilliance I radiated, the obscuring darkness crept closer, threatening to suffocate all the hope I had ignited. Heart pounding, I stumbled back, the weight of despair washing over me once more. The memories of lost souls appeared again, their anguished faces breaking through the overpowering darkness. I could feel their cries reverberating in my ears, a haunting reminder of the suffering that remained. "Free us," they begged, a chorus of sorrow that squeezed my heart. "I'm trying," I shouted, tears stinging my eyes. The fear began to creep, gnawing at the edges of my resolve. What if I couldn't hold the darkness at bay? What if the shadows swallowed me whole? With every ounce of will, I called forth the energy again, channeling it deeper than before. "I won't let you win." With a ferocious roar, I unleashed an even greater wave of light. The radiance crackled in the air, forming a halo around me, pushing back against the encroaching darkness. I felt the energy swirling, a whirlwind of hope and defiance. The shadows recoiled, shrieking in fury and in fear, their inky tendrils retracting just slightly, as if my light had scorched them. But that moment of triumph was fleeting. In a flash, the entity twisted, and from its depths, a new wave of shadows crashed forward with unimaginable force. "You are nothing without your fear," it howled, an icy gale cutting through my resolve. The very trees shuddered as the darkness surged around me, clamoring to snuff out the brightness that dared confront it. I felt the cold creep upon me, settling over my skin like a fog. Every negative thought twisted, wrapping around my mind once more. Isolation, doubt, regret, they all flooded the space, making the shadows' promises sound sweet, enticing. "Join us. Numb the pain," they whispered, just a breath away from enveloping my thoughts entirely. But deep within, I found a light of resistance. "I am stronger than this," I insisted, clenching my fists as I focused on the very core of my being. Drawing from the ancient tree's power, I searched for that connection to the world around me, the roots of the earth intertwining with my spirit. "I will break this cycle." As I released my intent once more, an intense glow enveloped me, radiating outward in a brilliant sphere. Each pulse echoed with life, resonating with the buried truths of those lost souls yearning for freedom. "I bring the light!" I yelled, and in that moment, the shadows surged to meet my energy, wrapping around it like a coiled serpent. But they were desperate, and I sensed that the battle was only beginning. "You cannot escape fate," the creature bellowed, its voice dripping with malice. The shadows began wrapping tighter around me, their slick, cold forms threatening to pierce through, to douse my bright flame. I could feel them digging in, scratching at the edge of my resolve, trying to find any vulnerability to exploit. Then, just when everything felt like it would collapse, an idea flickered in my mind, a moment of connection to all life around me. I thought back to the memories, the anguished faces begging for release. "I will harness your pain," I cried out, invoking their strength, their yearning for liberation. The air thickened, and the shadows shrieked, a dissonance of chaos and terror echoing. I felt the energy surge within me, swelling like a tide that pushed against the weight of darkness surrounding me. I focused, and with a loud, fierce roar, I thrust my hands forward, bathing the entire clearing in a brilliant cascade of light. The absolute brilliance erupted, splintering the shadows, a stunning shockwave that echoed off the trees. They writhed and twisted, losing form for the briefest moment as my energy engulfed them. A cacophony of wails filled the night air. The contractions of motion reflected pain, confusion, and a desperate wish to escape the impending light. But then the shadows began to reform, gathering again, rising up in vicious swells, angrier than before. "You dare challenge the darkness?" The creature bellowed, a low, rumbling growl that shook the clearing to its very core. "You will pay for this insolence." Heart racing, I felt a surge of panic. What if this was all for nothing? What if the darkness won? I gritted my teeth, shaking off the creeping despair. "I can't let go." The thought ignited an inferno of rage against that gnawing fear. With all the lost hope and torment echoed in my mind, I fueled the light with everything I had left. In that moment, I became one with the battle, shimmering threads of life and spirit intertwining around me. I could feel the ancient roots of the earth beneath me, every whisper of the forest surrounding me, each pulse of shared existence illuminating the darkness threatening to consume us all. "I will never surrender," I shouted into the void, the light exploding outward with renewed vigor, illuminating even the darkest corners of the forest. And as it expanded, I sensed that the darkness hesitated, its form flickering, faltering against the brilliance I projected. But then it howled louder, the sound reverberating through the trees, and I felt a gust of wind rush past me, laden with whispers of despair. "You cannot withstand this force." Feel the void seep in. Suddenly, shadows rushed in, surrounding me on all sides, hungry and relentless. I felt their icy tendrils clawing at my essence, every bit of them trying to tear down my defenses, threatening to snuff out my light. "Join us! Embrace the shadows," they hissed, their voices a sickly sweet melody meant to woo my attention away from the fire that blazed within. But I fought back, summoning every memory of resilience I could muster. "I am stronger than this." Each word rang clear through the chaos. I didn't just have to fight for me. I had to fight for the lives bound to that darkness. With a heart full of purpose, I pushed back against the shadows, pouring everything I had into the light flickering in my chest. Each pulse of warmth fought against the cold dread enveloping me. But I knew they were waiting for a slip, a moment of doubt to seep in. As I stood resolute, the shadows began to shift, contorting into shapes, distorted faces and clawing hands stretched towards me. They whispered taunts, mocking my defiance, each syllable dripped with venom. I couldn't help but glance sideways, where a dark figure lurked, its eyes gleaming like fractured stars. Suddenly, a chilling wind swept through the space, swirling around me, making the shadows dance, setting them alive with frenetic energy. It felt as though they were pulling something from the depths of my soul, hungry for my fear. Anxiety clawed at my mind, knotting it like twisted roots. What were they, and what did they want from me? With a surge of determination, I clenched my fists and drew in a breath, trying to gather my thoughts. I couldn't give in. Not now. Behind the shifting forms, I sensed movement, a buzzing energy like flies swarming a carcass. The shadows took on a thickened presence, merging together, forming a pit of blackness that felt hunger incarnate. Then, I heard it, a low rumble, like thunder rolling over an unseen horizon. It echoed within the hollow of my chest. The air turned heavier, thick with overripe tension. I took a step back, and my heart raced as the ground beneath me pulsed, as if alive, beating to a rhythm only they could hear. From the corner of my eye, a flicker of light stabbed through the dark. A small, almost innocuous spark, but it flickered with promise. I reached for it, feeling the shadows recoil slightly, the atmosphere thickening with their anger. But just as I began to grasp it, the floor beneath me cracked like ice, splitting open to reveal a deep chasm. It was as if I could hear the void breathing, hungry for whatever light I dared to approach. The further I leaned in, the more the shadows seemed to writhe in frustration, their cries mingling with the howling wind. I was drawn to the abyss, its depths calling to my very essence, as though it could consume all doubt and fear. Still, somewhere deep inside me, the flicker of hope urged me to resist, to hold fast against the tide. But the shadows weren't done. They surged, pressuring me from all sides, whispering horrors that made my breath hitch. Visions of failure and despair. I saw faces of those I loved, fading into the engulfing dark. Their voices joined the cacophony of shadows, begging me to join them, to surrender. "Don't listen! Don't listen!" I shouted into the void, my voice shaking but rising above the torment. I held onto the light, praying it would remain strong enough to fend them off. Just as I thought I had gathered my strength, a chilling realization swept over me. The darkness was alive, and it was learning. Those things surrounding me were no mere entities. They were memories, regrets, twisting and melding into a single mass of fear. I had to break free, but what if turning away from them meant losing a part of myself? With renewed resolve, I closed my eyes and envisioned a barrier, a wall of bright energy pushing back against the encroaching darkness. I could see its outline within my mind. It shimmered like silver against black velvet. Would it be enough to ward them off? The shadows shrieked, the sound clawing at my ears as they convulsed around me like a storm threatening to break. And then, just as I felt the energy begin to pulse in harmony with my heart, everything became silent. For a moment, I was gripped by a stillness that wrapped itself around me like a thick fog. I opened my eyes, confusion washing over me. Where had the cacophony gone? Had my barrier truly kept them at bay? But in the swirling silence, I could feel the weight of something else, a shadow lurking just beyond the edge of my vision. It wasn't gone, merely waiting, biding its time for my next moment of weakness. And that thought made my skin crawl because shadows were patient. They thrived on time, always circling back around to find the openings left unguarded. The silence gnawed at my nerves, stretching uncomfortably like a taut string ready to snap. I could feel the shadows lurking just outside my line of sight, their presence pressing in on me like a weighty fog, muted yet oppressive. I resisted the urge to look around me, knowing that focusing on the light within was my only defense. Each breath I took grew more labored, as if the air itself had thickened with the darkness. Then, without warning, rustling began to echo from the corner of my vision. A flicker of movement caught my eye, drawing my gaze towards a small pile of shadows swirling near the edge of my light. They began to coalesce into a solid form, first amorphous, then distinctly human. My heart skipped a beat as the figure slowly emerged, a haunting silhouette framed by the enveloping dark. It stood unnaturally still, the shape eerily familiar, with features subtly flickering like a candle on the verge of being snuffed out. I squinted, desperate to discern if this was real or just another trick played by the shadows. As I took a cautious step forward, the figure's face took on a more tangible shape, and my breath caught in my throat. It mirrored someone I knew, someone I had lost long ago. The likeness was a cruel imitation, with hollow eyes staring into my soul, reflecting a sorrow I could hardly bear to witness. "Help me," it whispered, the voice a ghostly echo filled with pain. My heart thudded as dread settled in my stomach. I wanted to reach out, to grasp this apparition and pull it to safety, but the shadows thickened, weaving tighter around me, biting at my resolve. "Stop!" I shouted, my voice hoarse, but the shadows only hissed in response, their laughter chilling me to the bone. "You're not real. You're just a figment, a trick of the darkness." I could feel the pressure building in my chest, a suffocating sense of loss washing over me. The figure's face twisted, its expression morphing into an unsettling grin as I spoke. "But I am real as your regrets," it jeered, the shadows swirling around it like a dark vortex, glowing softly with a sinister light. It stepped closer, each movement fluid and unnatural, almost as if it was gliding rather than walking. "You can't escape them. They will always be a part of you." The air turned frigid, buzzing with an energy that felt alive. Echoes of laughter rang out, disembodied voices repeating the words, "Join us," layering over each other until it became a haunting melody that reverberated in my mind. Their chant was relentless, promising warmth and acceptance, a comforting embrace within the deep, unyielding dark. Yet beneath the surface of that embrace, I sensed the dread. It coiled like a serpent ready to strike. I staggered back, feeling the icy tendrils reach for me again, inching ever closer, pulling me into their suffocating depths. I needed to fight back to resist their seductive lull. Summoning my strength, I envisioned the barrier of light I had created earlier, focusing on its glow and imagery like a lifeline in the clutches of despair. The pulse of warmth began to rise within me again as I steadied my breath. "I will not let you win," I yelled, my voice shaking but firm, like a beacon cutting through the darkness. As I concentrated, the swirling shadows reacted violently, contorting into an angry mass. The phantom figure morphed, stretching impossibly tall and broad, its eyes burning like coals. "You think you can resist us? You are trapped in your own mind, and we own this place," it growled, the tone deep and menacing. The shadows began to close in, tightening like a noose around my throat. With a surge of instinct, I thrust my hands out, feeling the glow within me expand. A burst of brilliant light erupted from my palms, illuminating the encroaching dark in a blinding flash. The shadows shrieked, a cacophony that rattled the very ground beneath my feet, a storm of fury and anguish churning. But in that brilliant light, I caught a glimpse of haunting shapes, lost memories, regrets, warning shadows of choices I feared to remember. Faces flickered past me, each one whispering their own story of sorrow, longing, and pain. It was a morbid parade, reminding me of what I had lost, of the burdens I'd failed to shoulder. "Leave me!" I screamed, pushing the light outward. The shadows recoiled, swirling chaotically, and for the first time, I felt an edge of hope piercing through the siphoning despair. I was no longer merely resisting. I was fighting back, reclaiming the pieces of myself. Yet just as it seemed like the tide was turning, I felt the unavoidable crack of my lucidity breaking. The ground beneath me began to tremble, fissures spreading like veins of darkness. I was losing my grip, the light flickering like a dying flame. Panic surged through me as I realized that while I could fend off the shadows, I was still tethered to them, still bound to the darkness that clawed at me. "Embrace your fate," the figure commanded, its voice booming through the chaos, resonating so deeply it felt like the very fabric of reality was shuddering. Shadows rumbled into shapes around me, looming and swaying. An army of dark intent lined up to reclaim what it believed was rightfully theirs. I felt my knees weaken, my resolve faltering as shapes darted toward me, whispering promises of peace wrapped in darkness. Fear crawled into my throat, threatening to choke me as I struggled against the relentless tide. Their voices blended in a maddening chorus, swelling, engulfing me in a tide of hopelessness. The flickering light wavered, and just when it seemed I would succumb, a spark ignited within. Clenching my fists, I willed the light to grow stronger, to push back against the impending dark. I focused on the essence of who I was, whom I fought for, and with a determination I didn't know I had, I shouted into the abyss, "I choose to live. I choose to fight." As I proclaimed my defiance, a fierce light erupted from my core, surging outward like a powerful wave, pushing back against the encroaching shadows. I could feel its warmth wrapping around me, instilling a fierce sense of purpose and strength. The darkness recoiled, shrieking like a wounded beast, and for a moment, I could hear their fear mingling with their anger. The shadows writhed, transforming into chaotic shapes, twisting and turning in desperation. I stood firm, my pulse hammering in my ears, trying to maintain focus amidst the cacophony. The light radiating from me grew brighter, illuminating the darkness, and through the shadows, I caught fleeting glimpses of faces distorted in pain, lost souls battling their own demons, their eyes wide with panic as they recognized the threat I posed to them. Suddenly, the ground beneath me cracked wider, jagged fissures gaping like dark mouths eager to swallow me whole. I felt the wind rush past, cold and biting, carrying with it the scent of decay. It wrapped around me, whispering my failures, each flurry of wind taunting my memories, digging deeper into my insecurities. I could almost hear the shadows laughing, delighting in the turmoil as they clawed at the edges of my resolve. Just when I thought I could hold my ground, the shadows began to reach out again, stretching toward me like witches' fingers snaking through the air, each one dripping with malice. "You can't escape what you really are," they hissed, a chorus of sinister voices that rose and fell like an eerie song. "You are one of us." I fought the despair that threatened to overwhelm me. With every ounce of determination coursing through my veins, I focused on my light, envisioning it as a shield around me, each pulse of energy keeping me grounded. The air crackled with energy as I created a dome of brilliance, the shadows pressing against it, thrashing at the barrier like waves against a cliff. But I felt the pressure building. The shadows began to work together, their collective power mushrooming into a swirling vortex. They howled, their cries creating a tempest, battering my shield with ferocity. It throbbed painfully around me, cracking and flickering like an old bulb. I sensed my weakening strength, the glimmer of light dimming with each retaliatory assault. Panic squeezed my heart as one particularly large shadow shaped itself into a grotesque figure. Its features twisted, a version of me that was dark and hollow, mirroring all my insecurities back to me. "You let them down. You're not worthy," it sneered, the voice thick with derision. "You know it, and so does everyone else. Join the shadows. You'll find peace." I shook my head, trying to clear the fog in my mind, but its words sunk deep, resonating like a bell tolling in the distance. I didn't want to think of my failures, the moments when I had faltered, the people I had disappointed. In my moment of doubt, the darkness thickened around me, and fingers of despair curled around my throat like a noose, tightening the more I focused on its taunt. "No, I refuse," I screamed into the chaos as I concentrated on the flickering light deep within. The warmth surged again, strengthening as I remembered the faces of those who had stood by me, believing in me, those who needed me to keep fighting. Their memories became fuel, igniting the light, pushing me to stand my ground. A brilliant flash erupted from my core, pushing the shadows back even further. I felt a moment of clarity amidst the swirling chaos. The grotesque figure leaned closer, its hollow eyes glimmering with fury as my light expanded like a star igniting in a dark sky. The voices quieted momentarily, stunned into silence at my boldness. But the respite was short-lived. In retribution, the shadows writhed violently, surging forward, clawing at the edges of my barrier. I felt a sharp pang of despair as they began to seep through the cracks, whispering of my weaknesses, threatening to envelop me whole again. Let the darkness in, they coaxed, their voices smooth and enticing. It's easier. You won't have to fight anymore. I felt the ground shudder, a rumbling that reverberated through my bones, and the cold fingers of shadow brushed against my skin, threatening to chill the light away. Vibrations coursed through the fissures, shaking the world around me, a storm brewing within the chaos. The air thickened with a weight that pressed down on me, and I stumbled, fear gnawing at me like a ravenous beast. Just as despair began to seep into my heart again, I recognized a flicker of movement from the corner of my eye. It was faint at first, but I could see another figure emerging from the shadows, a familiar silhouette, standing strong against the tide. My heart raced as recognition struck me. It was my long-lost friend, the one I had thought would be lost forever. Their visage was flickering between light and dark, but their presence brought hope. They extended a hand towards me, and although I could see the shadows curling around them, they stood firm. "Don't give in," they urged, their voice ringing clear like a chime that cut through the dark. "You're not alone. Remember what we fought for. We can overcome this together." Their words ignited something deep within, a flicker of resilience that caused my heart to swell. "Together," I echoed, feeling the correctness of that thought. For a brief moment, the shadows hesitated, as if they too recognized the threat we posed when united. I concentrated all my energy, channeling it toward my friend, feeling their strength feeding my own as we locked our gaze in a moment of silent understanding, a promise that together we could vanquish the darkness. The shadows recoiled slightly, their forms writhing in fury. "You can't win," they screeched, the sound of their voices grating against my ears. I couldn't let fear consume me. I had to fight for my friend, for everyone who had ever struggled against the dark. As we reached toward one another, the light between us blazed with fervor, a radiant barrier breaking through the shadows that clung to us. With our combined strength, I could feel the tide beginning to turn. The shadows howled with rage, frantic flashes of dark power sparking against the brilliance of our unity. "We are stronger than you," we shouted in unison, and with that declaration, a blinding light erupted between us, cascading outward and tearing through the encroaching darkness like a blade. The shadows shrieked, writhing in agony as the luminous force pushed them away, forcing them to retreat. But just as victory seemed within reach, I could sense a darker presence looming beyond, waiting in the shadows, biding its time. There was something deeper hidden beneath the surface, something I hadn't yet confronted that threatened to bind me again. I strained against the tide of emerging thoughts and memories, the darker storm brewing beneath. As I fought against the darkness, a chilling realization settled in like ice through my veins. What I faced was not just the shadows that surrounded me, but the embodiment of all my fears, my guilt, and all the choices I had made that haunted my soul. Overcoming this darkness meant more than just fighting for myself or my friend. It meant confronting every painful piece of me I had hidden away. The realization sank in like a stone, pulling me deeper into despair. I could feel the weight of each unaddressed fear and doubt, lurking just beyond the light, a chilling presence that was both familiar and terrifying. Every regret, every moment of weakness echoed around me, the shadows morphing into distorted memories that pressed ever closer. They swirled like a menacing fog, whispering my failures, reminding me of everything I tried to forget. In the midst of all this turmoil, I felt the ground tremble beneath me again, shaking with an intensity that sent vibrations through my very being. I turned and saw the shadows coalesce into a larger mass, a gaping maw filled with darkness wide enough to consume me whole. My friend, still beside me, met my gaze, their eyes wide with urgency. "We need to confront them together," they urged, their voice steady but laced with fear. To my horror, the shadows began forming images, a parade of my past. They assembled into grotesque depictions of moments I had desperately tried to bury. The times I had failed to stand up for others, the hurtful words exchanged in anger, and the friendships left to wither. I watched helplessly as they danced before me, each scene varying in its torment, each one pulling at the seams of my heart. One particular moment emerged as if forced to the forefront by some unseen hand. I saw myself standing there, hesitant and fearful, as a friend reached out for help that I had refused to acknowledge. I had turned away, letting them fall into a world of darkness that felt all too similar to where I now stood. Each scream of despair echoed in my heart, reverberating with guilt and shame. "No," I gasped, shaking my head in disbelief. The shadows seized this chance, capitalizing on my moment of vulnerability. They charged forward with a furious rush, burrowing into the cracks of my light with renewed vigor, creeping ever closer to extinguishing my will. I could feel them clawing at my resolve, seeking to reclaim control over my mind, twisting the moment into a weapon against me. "Stay with me," my friend shouted, gripping my arm tightly, their warmth anchoring me amidst the storm. I could feel the pulse of their determination, urging me to focus on the light, on what we were fighting for. "You have to remember who you are," they declared, the words slicing through the fog of despair. Gathering my breath, I pushed back against the dread, forcing my mind to clear. I needed to remember. I had fought for so much, and giving in would mean letting the shadows win. Not just over me, but over everything I cared about. I closed my eyes and envisioned the faces of those I loved, their smiles igniting a flicker of hope. As I turned inward, I recalled every triumph, every moment of bravery that had filled me with light. I opened my eyes. The shadows hesitated as I found my footing again. "I am not defined by my mistakes," I yelled with renewed fervor, commanding the energy coiling within me to rise. The warmth pushed through my veins, igniting a brilliant light that enveloped me once more. The instincts to retreat boiled over as I thrust my arms outward, projecting the light in a radiant wave. The shadows screamed, contorting violently, unable to withstand the brightness. Yet beneath their chaos lay an even darker presence, a force pulling the shadows back together, a master puppeteer orchestrating their movements, waiting in the background, unseen yet palpable. "What is this?" I thought, dread creeping in once more. I could feel it watching, waiting for my moment of weakness. Despite pushing the shadows back, there was a lingering fear that clung to me, an awareness that something much more sinister was at play. I looked at my friend, desperation etched on their face. "Can you feel it?" I asked quietly, my voice barely above a whisper. They nodded, sensing the oppressive weight of the darkness that felt almost sentient, an entity that seemed to draw strength from our fear. It was like a predator circling its prey, waiting for us to falter. Just then, the shadows surged again, their howls blending into a sinister symphony that threatened to drown out my thoughts. The twisted mass formed a massive figure, its outline shifting and flickering like a flame. Its eyes glowed a deep crimson, and I could feel its piercing gaze drilling into my soul. "You come here to fight, yet you carry the weight of your soul," it taunted, the voice deep and ominous, resonating through the darkness. "They are right," the figure continued, oozing confidence. "Let go of your hope. There's no escape from the darkness within you." As it spoke, the memories it conjured flipped through my mind like a slideshow of guilt, weighing heavy on my spirit. I found myself trapped, entranced by the alluring call of surrender. I could feel the pull of despair grow stronger, inching ever closer. The chilling thought crept in that perhaps I wasn't strong enough to fight this entity, that my light might flicker and fade in the face of such overwhelming darkness. But at that moment, I glanced at my friend, their unwavering spirit acting as a guiding light. I realized we were in this together. Our collective strength was a force the shadows had underestimated. Without breaking our connection, we focused on each other, the warmth we radiated beginning to harmonize, resonating with a pure energy that pushed back against the sinister force. Together, I reaffirmed, the word a rallying cry amidst the chaos. We combined our energies, visualizing a shield of light that pulsated between us, growing stronger as we united our wills. The air crackled in response, and I could feel that even the shadows began to quake, uncertain in the presence of our bond. Yet the figure's laughter boomed like thunder, mocking us. You think your pitiful light controls anything? I am the abyss. I am eternal. It reached out, tendrils of darkness clawing toward us, the air thick with a heavy dread. I could feel the shadows creeping up my legs, like icy fingers attempting to pull me down into the depths of despair. Realizing we needed to act decisively, I summoned every ounce of strength I had left. Now! I shouted, and the light surged forward, a brilliant beam carving through the thick, suffocating darkness. The shadows screamed, flailing violently as they were forced to retreat, the monstrous figure shifting back into the writhing masses. But just as I believed victory was within our grasp, I felt a deep chill wash over me. The shadows flickered and began morphing into unsettling figures, ghostly silhouettes of those I had lost. They shaped themselves into friends and family, each face twisted in sorrow, their mouths moving in silent screams. My heart sank as their hollow eyes bore into me, relaying a deep sense of despair. "Look what you've done!" they cried out, their voices resonating with anguish. "You abandoned us?" Each word was a dagger to my heart, pulling me under again into a sea of haunting memories. The mounting grief threatened to consume me, as the shadows fed off my guilt, twisting and amplifying it into a consuming darkness. "Don't! They're not real!" I shouted, but it felt like my words were swallowed by the churning despair. My spirit trembled as I glanced at my friend. I could see their resolve wavering too, caught in the emotional web crafted by the malevolent figure. "We have to hold on," they urged me, their voice infused with a mix of fear and determination. In that moment, I realized that the shadows were using my memories against me, trying to fracture the very bond we had formed. I couldn't let that happen. Gathering the light swirling within, I recalled the memories of love, laughter, and joy, everything I treasured about those I had lost. I focused on those moments, letting their warmth fill my heart. I needed to remember who I was and what I stood for. With a furious resolve, I raised my voice above the cacophony. "You have no power here," I bellowed, pushing the light forward again, forcing it to weave through the shadows surrounding me. Each pulse of brilliance cut through the darkness, illuminating the faces of my friends from my memories, allowing them to push back against the darkness. The shadows screamed, their forms distorting in agony as they shrieked and writhed, unable to withstand the onslaught of my love and light. Yet I could feel the master figure still looming, lurking in the shadows, its gaze locked onto me, waiting for just the right moment to strike. "Fight!" my friend shouted, bolstering my resolve as our combined light pulsed brighter, glimmering against the oppressive dark. I could feel them anchoring me, grounding me in this moment of turmoil. "Together, we can push through," I exclaimed, my heart racing with determination. Our energy intertwined, creating a barrier of light that began to sharpen, effectively driving the shadows back. As the malevolent figure melted into the shadows, I knew we had to confront it. There could be no more running away. The hardest battle lay ahead, yet I felt empowered by the connection we had forged, ready to face whatever darkness awaited. It was time to confront the abyss, to step into the unknown and fight for my soul. As the shadows slithered back, the oppressive weight grew heavier, swirling with an unsettling energy. My heart hammered in my chest, a rapid drumbeat that seemed to echo my fear. All around, the air thickened, charged with a predatory tension that hinted at the depths of the darkness still lurking. I could sense it watching, waiting for that crucial crack in my resolve when it could strike again. I tightened my grip on my friend's hand, feeling their warmth seep into me like lifeblood, banishing the chill encroaching upon my soul. "Remember why we fight," I shouted, trying to steer my mind away from the fear creeping in. "We can't let it win." With one deep breath, I prepared to confront whatever horror lay ahead. The shadows around us twisted and morphed, reshaping into grotesque forms with unsettling smiles, mouths twisted in ways that felt wrong. They padded silently on ethereal feet, creeping closer, their eyes glowing like lanterns in the dark, penetrating into my thoughts. I felt the air shift, thick and suffocating, a tangible reminder of the nightmare closing in. As I locked eyes with one of the figures, it raised a hand and pointed directly at me, its finger elongated and bony, trembling in accusation. A whisper followed, chilling and sinister, wrapping around me like a noose. "You think you are strong, but you are weak." The voice slithered around me, infused with malice. "You're just a shadow of your true self." I felt everything inside me quiver, doubt seeping through the cracks of my armor. The haunting words reverberated, filling the space with an eerie echo of truth. Shadows flooded my mind with memories of every time I had felt small, moments when the darkness felt insurmountable. My knees nearly buckled as I envisioned the faces from my past I'd let down, casting aside their needs for my convenience. Each image sent jagged shards of guilt slicing through my heart. "No!" I shouted, pushing against the suffocating wave of despair. "I am more than my regrets." I didn't recognize my own voice. It was raw and trembling, but filled with defiance. As the shadows closed in, I summoned memories of laughter, love, and all the moments that fueled my light. Suddenly, the ground trembled again, and a low rumble resonated beneath us, deep and earth-shaking, almost as if the very world was responding to the battle unfolding. The shadows writhed violently, forcing me to break my gaze from their specters, realizing they were losing their form, fading under the intensity of my resisting will. But then came a chilling roar, and the darkness warped, revealing a gaping red maw filled with jagged teeth, more monstrous than I could have ever imagined. From it, I felt a wave of darkness crash over me, pulling my energy as if it thrived on my fear. "You think you can win?" The voice cracked like thunder, booming as it echoed in the air and reverberated in my very bones. "I own your nightmares. I am your true reflection." The horror of it struck me flat, turning my blood to ice. I saw phantoms unfurl behind the creature's fanged mouth, the swirling remnants of my deepest fears. Failure, loss, loneliness, all the regrets that strained my heart. The shadows seemed to multiply, emerging from that abyss as they expanded endlessly with a terrifying force, each more horrifying than the last. I felt my breath shallow as I backed away involuntarily, each step taking me deeper into the darkness lurking just outside, and I wasn't sure how much longer I could hold on. I glimpsed the tormented faces of friends I had failed, intermingling with images of my younger self, crying for acceptance. Their eyes reflected disappointment, sorrow that seeped deep into the pit of my stomach like poison. "Fight back," my friend yelled, their voice cutting through my dread as they stepped forward, grounding me. I saw their own fear mirrored back, the fear that they too would be consumed if I gave in. "We have to believe." Their conviction ignited a flicker inside me, strong enough to push back the darkness with a surge of energy. With every ounce of strength we possessed, I focused, visualizing the light surrounding us building like a shield. "Together," I echoed, the words resonating with power. As we united our thoughts, the shadows recoiled, the sinister figure arching back as the force of our combined will clashed hard against the encroaching darkness. A blinding flash erupted, and the creatures recoiled, shrieking, their forms writhing as we pushed on, their faces twisting in agony, both familiar and terrifying. But just as I felt the tide turning, a growl rumbled like distant thunder, reverberating through the air, shaking the ground beneath us. The malevolent figure drew closer, its presence darkening the light. I could feel its hungry gaze, its anticipation as if waiting to consume the very essence of my soul. I felt a rush of air around me, a cold whisper skimming my skin. "Don't you understand?" It hissed, the voice smooth and sinister. "You can't fight what is already you." The shadows morphed again, reforming into familiar faces, twisting memories into terrifying reflections of myself, all fueled by self-doubt and regret. Remember when you failed? Remember the voices that told you you're not worthy? They chanted in unison, echoing the words I had feared all along. Every echo slithered into my mind, attempting to instill the deep-rooted belief that I had always been unworthy, that the struggles I faced were proof that I didn't belong here. I felt the very ground beneath me warp like a living thing, shifting and flowing as if trying to swallow me whole. My heart raced, and despair clawed at my throat, making it hard to breathe. I could empathize with the shadows for a split second. They fed off despair and darkness just like a starving creature, but I had to resist. "No, I am not my past," I spluttered, forcing every ounce of defiance through each word. I drew on the warmth of my own light, reckless with determination. I remembered all those moments of kindness and compassion I had shared, the lives I had touched. As if my recollection acted like lighter fluid, a blazing warmth surged within me, forcing back the oppressive darkness. The four corners of my world trembled as the shadows shrieked, desperate to cling on to me and pull me into that abyss of self-loathing. The reality of their grasp fell heavy upon my shoulders, but the pulse of my light surged stronger, piercing the depths of the dark swirling around. Just when I thought I could prevail, the figure bent low, its presence pulsating with angry energy. "You will never break free from what you have done. The shadows will always remain inside you. Accept it, and you'll find peace." The words wrapped around me like a dense fog, each syllable a reminder of every choice I regretted. "Peace? To surrender to you?" I challenged, my voice a fierce whisper against the rising tempest. "I will never follow that path." Channeling every piece of love and courage I had left, I lifted my gaze to face the monstrous figure squarely. As our eyes locked, a primal silence enveloped us, a moment where time stretched like the dark void in between. I stood amidst the chaos, our energies clashing, and I knew this was the threshold, the critical moment where I could either be swallowed by despair or rise above. With determination lighting the depths of my spirit, I surged forward, our lights drawing closer together, forming a beacon that promised hope and redemption. It pierced through the darkness, breaking the heavy grip of shadows swirling around us, line by line, stitch by stitch, until they thickened into something not just formidable, but utterly horrifying. In that moment, my friend and I held our ground, combating the shadows, ready to face the aftermath of this chilling confrontation. We were warriors armed with memories forged from joy and light, ready to fight against the gnashing teeth of fear and hopelessness. Our united front shimmered even brighter, shedding the light of courage into the void as we prepared for the next wave that we knew was coming. And then suddenly it happened. The shadows fell silent, recoiling with a vengeance, gathering themselves into a thick fog that breathed heavily, swirling uneasily around us. A low, bone-chilling laughter began echoing through the air, unnatural and disconcerting, the sort that sets your skin crawling and your heart hammering relentlessly in your chest. I could feel the menacing energy condensing, forming into one singular entity that pulsated with dark power, eagerly preparing for its next attempt to crush our spirits. The darkness felt sentient, a malicious intelligence lurking behind the veil that awaited our next move, savagely aware of our struggles and weaknesses. As uncertainty gripped my heart, I felt commanded to face the horror fully, to stand steadfast even as the chill around us deepened, wrapping me in its clammy embrace. The embrace of shadows whispered secrets of despair, but I had to hold on. This night was far from over, and I couldn't allow it to trap us either through fear or doubt. The figure lurked just beyond reach, its voice parting the silence like a razor. Your light won't last. You'll soon understand the futility of your fight. Your light won't last. You'll soon understand the futility of your fight. The words hung in the air, tauntingly echoing in my mind, each syllable wrapping around me tighter, like chains forged from my deepest fears. I could feel the chill creeping back in, pressing against my skin, crawling toward the core of my being. The entity hovered, an ominous shadow looming, shifting and contorting like a living smoke that seeped into every corner of the space around us. I blinked hard, trying to shake off the suffocating grasp of despair. Memories of times when I felt utterly alone surged forth, visions of silent nights filled with heartache. My heart raced painfully, battling against the weight of each recollected moment, trying to drown me in sorrow. The shadows began to swirl faster, now a vortex of darkness, twisting ominously, each flicker in the shadows seeming to come alive, reaching out like clawed hands eager to snatch me into oblivion. "No, I won't let you win," I shouted into the darkness, forcing my voice to rise above the howling shadows. I could feel my friend's presence beside me, steadfast and true. The warmth of their loyalty ignited a spark deep within, and I drew on that light with all my will. Dread gnawed at the edges of my mind as the figure laughed once more, an echoing cackle that rattled my bones. "You think this little flicker can stand against me?" It bellowed, and with each word, the shadows intensified, swirling into furious tendrils that lashed out at the air around us, eager to suffocate our light. I felt a rush of air as tendrils snaked toward me, brushing against my skin like icy fingers. The sensation sent shivers down my spine, and I recoiled instinctively, heart pounding louder in my ears. "Don't let go. We have to stand together," I urged my friend, feeling their determination pulsate in response. With a shared breath, we closed our eyes for a moment, focusing on the light inside us. I envisioned it, a vibrant glow fueled by hope, by every cherished memory, illuminating the suffocating dark. In this shared intention, I sensed something shift. The shadows hesitated, coiling back like wounded serpents, sensing the fire that was building within. Instinctively, I thrust my hands forward, channeling everything I felt into a beam of light. It erupted from me, bright and fierce, illuminating the tortured faces that had emerged from the dark, a chaotic collection of emotions reflected back. Family, friends, loved ones, each face contorted with sorrow, anger, and grief, begging for release from the shadows that bound them. "Do you see this?" I cried out, gesturing toward the specters. "I will not let their hopes and dreams be devoured by your darkness." Uncertainty flickered in their eyes for just a moment, revealing the pain they carried. I pushed harder, flooding them with light, fury and love intertwined, igniting a spark of recognition in their hollow features. Then, with a sudden force, the shadowy figure surged forward, its outline shifting between nightmare and reality. "You think you can save them? They are part of this darkness. You are part of this darkness," it roared, the voice drenched with poison. I could feel its breath, a rancid wind that made me want to gag, filled with despair and ash, swallowing the air around me. Without warning, the specters began to vanish, swallowed whole by the looming darkness, one by one. Their cries echoed like distant thunder, striking at my heart with each lost voice. I felt despair press down on me, heavy like lead, threatening to crush my spirit. "No, no," I pleaded, the desperation spilling from me in waves. "I won't let you take them." I forced my feet to move, charging at the monstrous figure that seemed almost playful, delighted by the havoc it was wreaking. Adrenaline coursed through my veins as I sprinted forward, fueled by a desperate need to reach my loved ones. The shadows surrounded me like a maelstrom, swirling endlessly, seeking to ensnare me in their depths. I could see my friend leap into action beside me, their own energy flaring up in defiance, a beacon against the rising dark. Suddenly, the shadows coalesced, forming a massive blackened wall, blocking my passage. It pulsed like a living thing, slick and glistening, a ghastly veil between me and the light. I felt the energy shift, the weight of fear pushing down on me like thick sludge. My heart raced even faster, pumping under the pressure of hopelessness. In a moment of clarity, I realized we had to push through. Together. On threes, I shouted, and together we counted. 1, 2, 3. We surged forward, our hands clasped tightly, channeling all we had into a singular force, a blinding ray of light that crashed against the dark barrier. The impact sent shockwaves rippling through the air, a sound like shattering glass. The shadow wall trembled but held firm, threatening to swallow us whole. I could feel its hunger, its desire to consume. It was intoxicating yet terrifying. Just as we prepared to unleash another surge, the figure's twisted face leaned closer, eyes flickering with malicious delight. "Foolish children," it hissed, the voice dropping an octave lower, vibrating with darkness. "Your light is nothing but a candle in the tempest. I will extinguish it." With a sudden lurch, the shadows lunged, cascading forward like waves crashing against the shore, engulfing us in their inky grasp. Dread washed over me as cold shadows invaded, tightening around my throat, clawing at my skin, slowing my breath. The light began to flicker, my heartbeat quickening with panic as I fought against the encompassing darkness, clawing at what little hope was left inside. "Don't give up," my friend gasped, striving against the entangling shadows, their struggle mimicking mine. In that moment, I felt a renewed sense of determination. The bond we forged flickered brightly in the dark, igniting something deep within both of us, a defiance that could burn brighter than the encroaching shadows. Rallying every ounce of strength, I focused on the warmth shining in the depths of my heart. The flicker of hope transformed into a roaring flame, piercing through the black mist. "We are not alone," I cried out, pushing against the layers of consuming darkness, forcing light through every crack. The shadows hissed violently, recoiling as the brilliance expanded outward, filling every space with warmth and clarity. For an electrifying moment, I felt invincible, the darkness retreating, screaming in disdain as we pressed forward, our connection igniting every precious memory into a shield against despair. But just as I thought we'd reached the core of victory, something monumental shifted. The very ground began to tremble, reverberating as if the essence of fear itself had awakened. A cacophony of wails erupted from the shadows, a dissonant chorus of anguish that shattered the air, reverberating through me like thunder. "Flee while you still can," the monstrous voice roared, its fury rising as shadows twisted violently into a horrific tempest. The air thickened with a suffocating weight, drowning out my thoughts as darkness unfurled like claws, threatening to pull me back into the void. I could feel the energy dwindling as I stumbled back, the light flickering threateningly. "We can't give in. We have to break its hold." I tightened my grip on my friend's hand, our shared resolve radiating like a beacon against the relentless shadows. The energy surged between us, a fragile thread that pulsed with life while the dark twisted around us, thrashing in an effort to divide and conquer. My heart pounded louder than ever, each beat a reminder of my purpose, the reason I needed to fight. The shadows shrieked angrily, swelling and twisting, forming grotesque shapes that tormented my vision. I could see faces within the darkness, their expressions warped and distorted. They screamed without sound, mouths stretching wide in silent agony. Each visage was a reflection of my deepest fears, my failures, regrets, and all the moments when I had lost hope. The depth of their anguish made my chest tighten, suffocating me in a wave of despair. My breath quickened as I felt that all too familiar weight on my chest, pulling me closer to the edge, dragging me toward an abyss of shadows eager to swallow me whole. "No, I will not succumb," I screamed, drawing on every bit of strength in my bones, pushing the light forward. The radiant energy began to pulse through the shadows, forcing them to recoil. But the entity, a swirling mass of tendrils, bristled, roaring in fury. It shot toward us with a sudden rush, its dark energies swirling like a violent tempest. I could feel the cold tang of fear bite at my skin, chilling me to the bone. As the darkness surged, I knew it was now or never. I focused on the flickering light inside me, feeling it grow as if fueled by sheer will. Together, I shouted to my friend, driving forward as one solid unit. Our energy merged, illuminating the oppressive darkness like a supernova. We can do this. Blast through. I channeled every ounce of love I had for those trapped in this terrible void. Every friend, every family member, every happy moment shared. With each thought, the glow intensified, bursting forth in blinding brilliance that reverberated against the shadows. The moment our light collided with the swirling darkness, it was as if the very air screamed, a deafening noise that penetrated my core. The shadows writhed, twisting angrily as bright tendrils lanced through them, dissecting their forms. The entity shrieked, an awful sound that vibrated through every fiber of my being, as I felt the ground beneath us shudder violently. I knew it was weakening, the malevolence fading, but it wasn't done fighting. Suddenly, the shadows merged into a singular form, towering over me, an enormous, monstrous figure with eyes like black holes, swirling with rage and despair. Its voice echoed, dark and thunderous, attempting to drown out the light. You think you can banish me? I am part of you. I will always be part of you. Each word dripped with venom, and I could feel its icy breath skimming my skin, blistering and frigid, as it tried to envelop me again. The chills crawled down my spine as I tried to break free from my past, the dark tendrils tugging at the edges of my mind, whispering insidiously, "You are unworthy. You will never escape." A flood of emotions rushed over me. Fear, anger, and sorrow crashing together like waves against jagged rocks. It felt like everything I had tried to bury was now pouring forth, begging for release. I faltered, visions of my life flashing like a broken film reel, moments of shame, despair, all clawing for my attention. But as the chilling darkness tried to wrap around me, I fought back fiercely. "No, you are not me," I shouted, letting the warmth of determination fill my soul, aglow with memories that had molded my very being. I closed my eyes for a split second, conjuring every scrap of strength within myself. I could feel my friend's presence beside me, their energy a stabilizing force against the encroaching shadows, and suddenly, in that alarming moment, the light began to penetrate deeper than I ever thought possible. Our light grew to a blinding intensity, radiating throughout the darkness. The figure howled, a raw hatred clawing at the fabric of reality as it writhed, torn between shadow and light, fighting to maintain its malicious grip on me. Finally, with one last surge of energy, I screamed, "You will not take me," and I thrust my hands forward, pouring every ounce of love, vulnerability, and resilience I possessed into the brilliant beam that shot forth. For a moment, time felt suspended, and when our light collided with the dark figure, an unexpected silence engulfed the chaos. Then a blinding flash erupted, splitting the darkness as if it were made of glass. I felt the weight of despair begin to lift, and with it, a horrific shriek unleashed, an ungodly sound that shattered the air, reverberating through the shadows that had haunted me for so long. I could see the monstrous figure, struggling, its shape distorting as the light expanded like a flower blooming under the sun. And just like that, the shadows dissipated, crumbling away into nothingness. The deafening roar faded to a whisper, and the overwhelming weight that had pressed hard against my chest finally broke, releasing a deluge of light that spread like wildfire. With a final crack, the monstrous shape shattered, spiraling away into a million tiny shards of darkness that evaporated like smoke, a banished nightmare. I staggered, breathless as the oppressive silence fell around us, and then the warmth returned, warm and comforting, wrapping itself around my spirit like a protective embrace. My friend and I stood there, panting, the residual glow lighting our surroundings. The shadows were gone, the fear slowly dissipating as we took hesitant breaths, feeling the light warming our hearts. We exchanged a glance, and without saying a word, we understood. Together, we had fought and won. But even as I savored the victory, I felt a lingering chill at the back of my mind, a nagging doubt that whispered cautions deep within. I knew the shadows were never truly gone. They would linger, waiting for me to falter, to let my guard down. Yet perhaps I didn't have to let the darkness define me. With the memories of love and friendship burned bright in my heart, I realized it was about balance, acknowledging the shadows without fear, knowing that I had within me a light strong enough to combat everything lurking just outside the corners of my mind. I turned to my friend, a sense of peace washing over me now that the storm had passed. "Let's get out of here," I said, my voice steady in the aftermath. Together, we took a step forward, the path ahead illuminated, not just by the remnants of our battle, but by the shared strength that had carried us through the darkness. And as we moved toward the light, the echoes of laughter surrounded me, as if others were shining with a warmth that mirrored my heart, a reminder that I was never alone in this fight.